Hello and welcome to MovieBoozer.com virtual pubcast. I'm your host, Ken Ekman, and I'm joined by Bill Leon, Bill Arsenault,
Hey.
and Hawk Ripshaw.
Hi.
Bill Leon, hey.
Hey.
He may be having some technical difficulties.
He's muted. Bill, you're muted.
Yes. So either way, we have Guardians of the Galaxy to talk about. But first, we're talking about everything else that we saw this last week. Well, I'm sure we'll have plenty of things to talk about with Guardians. If you came here simply for Guardians, then I would suggest fast-forwarding by about an hour or so. Just advance notice for those.
Or more, depending on rants.
That's very true. But, just play it by ear. What I'll do is I'll try to remember to time code that later. Meanwhile, we had a few things. First of all, we're going to play a little catch-up here. Hawk Ripjaw was absent last week's episode, and the film that we had both agreed to discuss during that week was The Devil's Candy. He is here now to talk about it. You heard my thoughts last week. I enjoyed it quite a bit. Hawk, tell us about it.
Yeah, so I recommended it without actually seeing it. I saw it, and I was like, you know what, that'll be a fun one to do. And then you saw it way before me, and then I finally saw it. Your main thing was that this movie is metal.
Yes.
And I was like, yeah, whatever. It's probably going to be metal. But holy shit, it's like, it starts out kind of metal because you hear the metal music, and then by the end, the climax is one of the most metal things I've ever seen.
The one thing I think I commented on, I read a comment Jay Bauman of Red Letter Media said about The Devil's Candy, that it is one of those movies that is full of heavy metal without feeling schlocky, and that's a very rare thing.
It is, yeah, and that climax is one of the most exciting climaxes I've seen in a horror movie in a long time. Like, it's just really a nail-biter.
Yeah.
It's almost unbearably tense because it's just constricting more and more. Like, it's such an intense finale. You think it's going to end with just complete despair and everyone dies.
Right, and it has a surprising ending. I don't want to go into too much detail, but it's a ending that you don't expect, and when it comes up, it's one of those setup and payoff moments that's just really it truly satifies.
Yeah, it's pretty rad movie. I like the way it was shot too.
Yeah.
What?
Well,
It's a rad movie.
It is. It's fucking rad. You should see it, Bill. It's actually pretty awesome.
I love that word, rad.
I like it too.
Rad's a cool word.
Dude, that
one of my favorites.
Tubular is a little stretching it a little too far.
Yes, tubular is a stretch. One of my favorite sequences in the film is I should not phrase it like that, but I'll do it anyway. One of my favorite sequences in the film comes immediately after the antagonist murders somebody, and he is mopping up the blood on the floor, and this is cut very carefully in between shots of the main character painting on his canvas. So you get a shot of a brush painting red paint, and then a shot of a mop mopping up, red blood. And it's a really kinetic sequence that it's striking, and it's really cool how much sinister energy it kind of has in that. Right,
the symbolism of the artist paints with his paintbrush, the killer paints with his blood brush, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Well, he's cleaning up while the other guy is creating.
Right.
To permanence. You know what I mean? So
and what's interesting is, as I mentioned last week, the antagonist, one of his main things is he's kind of like a suppressed artist. He's not allowed to do his art.
I liked there's also some symbolism with the devil, obviously, with the title being The Devil's Candy.
Some.
A lot, quite a bit, but especially with some of the characters, like the art guy, like the art. What was his role? The guy that
the art guy.
It's something to do with him buying art or hiring him or something.
He's a manager, and what he does, he deals in art. What art dealers do basically is they are facilitators and go-betweens between the artist and buyers. They have connections, and they have the ability to put on shows that people will attend. So if you get one who knows their shit, then an artist who's just up and coming can suddenly become the newest, biggest thing.
Okay, all right. Well, that guy had some parallels to the devil, obviously.
Yes. Selling his soul, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. Talking about sacrifice, and who plays him? It was some guy that I recognized, but I can't remember. Let me look it up.
That's a very good question.
It's a guy that when you look at him, he's like, oh, he's totally the devil. Even though it's not explicitly stated in this film, and it may not be, they just drew some very heavy parallels to suggest that this character, in a sort of roundabout way, is an antagonist of the film.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see here.
That was Leonard.
Tony Amendola.
Right?
Who?
Tony Amendola. He was Father Quintero in The Legend of Zorro, and Don Luis in The Mask of Zorro. He was Father Perez in Annabelle.
He always plays those kind of elite kind of upper crust characters. And because of his Hispanic looks to him, he often gets cast in movies like, as you mentioned, Zorro and things like that. He's
kind of like a more sinister Ricardo Montalban.
You know what?
That's tough to be.
Yeah, it's hard to be a more sinister Ricardo Montalban.
I guess maybe a more low key sinister Ricardo Montalban.
I would say where Ricardo Montalban is more of a big eccentric performer. He's more of a he's more capable of subtlety.
It's a little more muted.
I would say maybe if you took Ricardo Montalban and throw in a little bit of Vincent Price, maybe.
Yeah, I'll say that. In any case, it's a 5-minute role that has a lot of impact.
Yeah.
The one thing I couldn't get away from is that the villain of the movie, the real one, played by who was
Pruitt Taylor Vince.
Pruitt Taylor Vince. I could not. It's really hard to look at him and not think of Kyle Gass from Tenacious D.
He kind of does have that structure to him, except I guess being a fan of Deadwood, I know his character from the second and third season is Mose Manuel, and so that's who I know him from.
And I just saw Tenacious D in The Pick of Destiny again only a couple weeks ago, so that was still fresh in my mind. I'm like, Kyle, no!
and the irony is his character in Deadwood is also kind of a weird, fucked up, sort of mentally disturbed character. Just to give a brief aside here, in Deadwood, his character Mose Manuel, in a random episode somewhere in the middle of season 2, he's trying to sell his gold claim for as much as he can, but his brother is not allowing him to do it because his brother's kind of a dick, and he winds up murdering his brother brutally just so that he can sell the gold claim. And then the entire third season is him coming to terms with how fucked up his life has become, and he actually becomes a empathetic character after just completely gunning down his brother in cold blood. It's really an amazing arc.
Interesting. I still need to watch Deadwood, but I've got so many other shows on my docket. Like I need to finish Silicon Valley. I need to finish Game of Thrones and that other one that I was watching.
That's the problem. You can never finish Deadwood because Deadwood itself never finished.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you know what I mean.
Oh, I know. Yeah,
to watch what exists. I remember watching like the first. This was back when you could get discs off of Netflix and you couldn't stream anything. I watched the first disc of Deadwood, and then I kind of had my attention diverted by some movies that came out. But I just remember Ian McShane saying the word cocksucker a lot of times.
The first episode has a wonderfully vulgar toast that I still propose once in the correct company. When one of the characters, a prospector, says, "Well, fuck us all for the limberdick cocksuckers we are."
And when do you do that?
To propose a toast. That's
any toast or like specific toast? Have you done it at a wedding?
Yeah, exactly. That's I went at my brother's wedding. I stood up, and I was the best man. I just stood up, held my glass high, and no, I cannot
I just need
imagine.
some more context here.
I would love to have to have seen that happen, but jeez, no. I'm one with friends. If we're having a party or something.
All right, I'll have to learn that toast.
Anyway, so so Devil's Candy. Final thoughts on it?
It's awesome. Really solid horror movie. The level of tension is really, really in full force. Everything about the movie, from the sound design to the cinematography and the pacing, is incredibly well structured.
Easily one of the best movies of 2017 so far, I must say.
I'd agree. Yeah.
And is it streaming currently anywhere?
It's
available for rental on Amazon.
And it's worth every penny. It's one of those movies that is certainly contribute to this movie's success if you can.
Yes, definitely, because it's been on the festival circuit since middle of 2015, so it's had a long road to now.
Yeah, it's one of those movies that has needed a release for a long time, and it's just like Imperial Dreams was technically a 2014 movie that didn't see release until January when Netflix got the rights. And I think it sucks when movies are given that much of a delay. It's really unfortunate.
Yeah.
But that said, it's available now, and it should be seen.
Definitely.
All right. So next on our docket, this weekend, in celebration of my birthday, and because I had plans fall through where I literally had nothing else to do, Bill A. and I, using Rabbit, free plug for Rabbit.
It's a website service that allows you to basically watch content, specifically videos, over the internet with anyone who has an account or is just a guest. You can watch like Netflix or whatever's on someone's webpage, and you can talk to each other through microphones or through a webcam or through a text box.
And it's a great way to share because in my case, I was in a situation where because plans fell through, I just didn't have anyone that I would have been able to spend time with on a couple of days around my birthday because everyone I knew was either working or had other plans or was sick. So I was able to, with Bill A., we orchestrated a movie fest, and we went through 5 different David Cronenberg movies over the course of 3 separate days.
Well, we went through 1 on Friday, and then 2 the next day, and then 2 on Sunday. And on Sunday, we were joined by the editor-in-chief of this very website, Zach Jeremiah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, he joined us, and we ended up, the 5 films we ended up seeing, we started with Videodrome, and then we moved to the next day where we saw his newest film, Maps to the Stars, which we followed up with The Dead Zone.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next day, we watched the S movies. We watched Shivers and we watched Scanners.
I just wanted to ask something really quick. I have not seen Maps to the Stars. How does that compare to what he's generally known for? Because that does not sound like a horror movie.
Well, he's kind of known for, like, obviously he's known for The Fly and Drone is known for, which are
yes. I would say it's wrong to say that Cronenberg is a horror filmmaker. He's a filmmaker who certainly is capable of making horror movies, but really his thing is telling a story about kind of the darker side of human nature.
That's true, because he did make Cosmopolis, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And the darker side of human biology too. He
yeah.
has a really interesting proclivities with regards to just the human body, specifically the torso, and the head. Like he's got an interesting
and the
point
arms
of view
and the legs
and basically every part of the human body is gross to him.
So, interesting tidbit, according to Wikipedia, is that Maps to the Stars is the first time that Cronenberg filmed in the United States.
That is very true. Prior
Yes.
to this, every single movie he has made was shot either in whole or in part in Canada, and then sometimes in Europe.
Now that I'm looking at his filmography, I'm kind of kicking myself for mentioning his horror films, because I completely spaced the fact that he did like Naked Lunch, A Dangerous Method, and
History
then
of
those
Violence,
ones,
Easter Promises.
History of Violence, yeah. Oh, History of Violence is so good.
And The Dead Zone, which
Oh,
we'll
yeah.
talk about in a little bit, it's not a horror movie either, so much as it's more of a supernatural science fiction story. It's very Twilight Zone.
Okay.
I think we should get started with Videodrome, which was our entry into this marathon.
Right.
I had previously seen it. A friend of mine, good friend of mine, sent me the Criterion Collection DVD of Videodrome, and I watched it on my own. And this was a while back, so this was kind of a refresher for me. But I remembered several sequences, and I wasn't going to spoil any of that for Ken. I wanted Ken to be as blank on this as possible going in.
Videodrome is probably one of the most built-up movies for me, because for years people have been telling me, oh man, you've got to see this movie, it's insane. And I've just never gotten around to it, even though I've always meant to. And pretty much everyone who I'm a fan of that does like movie reviews has talked to this movie up and says that this is the shit. And even after all that build-up, it could not have been built up enough for me. It was quite an experience watching that movie.
It's a great movie.
The movie exists in a weird part of time when this was like the Reagan era, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh yeah.
This was They Live kind of genre filmmaking, but it's almost a part of a subgenre where it's got this message, this philosophy with regards to new media, specifically analog media like VHS, videotape, and those kind of broadcastings, which didn't last very long. It lasted like maybe a decade and a half, maybe 2 decades.
Well, the movie came out in
1983,
which was sort of the high watermark for video specifically, because video was at that time you could rent movies on VHS. VHS was just becoming this big thing. Made for video films were becoming huge at that time. That was like when the wave started cresting. And over the course of that next decade, and not just decade, I would say pretty much through 1996 or 97, video was the chief form of digestible entertainment for your average everyday person.
Yes, absolutely. And in the time this movie came out, I mean, videotapes were really expensive to buy. And even to rent a little bit, you had to like put down a deposit and all that kind of stuff.
Oftentimes, rental places made you pay a monthly or annual fee on top of the cost of renting, and and many places rented video players because most people couldn't afford to buy a video player.
That's what we did. We used to rent VHS players often before we eventually, bit the bullet and bought one around the time DVD players were coming out. So I mean that's how long it took us, but this came out in that weird time, and it's kind of funny how it's still very prophetic and universal.
Yes, and it's
got a language that definitely resonates to today, even though the formats have changed.
The thing is, the formats have changed, but the theme of radio. Here's the thing: I actually used to listen to a podcast called Radiodrome. So now I keep confusing it with Videodrome. Anyway, Videodrome. The thing about Videodrome is the theme of it is kind of the violence and sexual depravity within our culture and how that comments upon us as a society. And in the movie, James Woods plays a television producer for a Toronto station that is basically
very unscrupulous.
Exactly. He's searching for the next most fucked up thing that he can air on TV, whether it be softcore porn or whether it be violent TV shows, things like that. And he happens upon a pirate TV signal that seems to be coming from the United States. And that signal is broadcasting a show called Videodrome. And Videodrome is all about just
murder.
Yeah, torture, implied rape, and murder.
Hooray!
It's literally just one camera shooting masked men harming women. It's just a one-take, one-shot camera setup. And instead of commenting on the content, his character's first reaction is, wow, look at this. This is so cost-effective.
Yeah. Not only
one camera, one setting, no plots. It's
Not only that, but the insinuation that people would be fascinated by watching this. And when you bring that to today's culture, how that the darknet is full of just creepy shit like that. Videos that have been taken by terrorists, things like that. There's a very easy through line that you can pull between the early years of video sharing and modern video sharing.
Yes, and even today with the access to all this stuff. I mean, tape sharing, you had to wait maybe a couple days or weeks before it got to you. Mm-hmm. Now it's like more immediate. You really just have to be secure in the cookies and the browsing history and what account you've signed into, all that stuff. But I've traversed the darknet, but I'm just which I've never have really. The closest I've ever gotten to was like comedy websites that might every once in a while show something a little too nasty. But even with that level of immediacy, it's still not nearly enough for our consumption. It's not enough to satisfy yet, and that's kind of what Videodrome has lurking underneath it all, is that this is never enough.
And as
need for more of
and as James Woods' character experiences Videodrome more and more, his mind gets warped by it, and he begins to hallucinate, and a government conspiracy develops that may or may not be going on entirely within his mind.
As this evolves, his body evolves, and he starts learning from like a professor type guy. It's some new wave type guy who's become obsessed with the video format and what it represents for humanity. And he talks about the new flesh and how Videodrome represents this new form of humanity that will be beyond the human body and all that stuff. And it's an interesting philosophical concept he brings up, but he does so in such a comically horrifying way.
That's the thing about this movie. It manages to be. I would say overall the movie qualifies it fits best and most comfortably into the surrealist category of film. It has horror moments, it has comedy moments, it has dramatic elements, but it really because of the way it drifts and the plot is not a fully. This sits much more comfortably next to, say, Eraserhead than it does, a slasher movie, for instance.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It fits more comfortably with something like even Lost Highway, which is probably more appropriate because that involves VHS.
That's true.
But both movies have kind of a non-linear, not completely non-linear, but non-linear maybe within its own fabric. Mm-hmm. Within its own style, it's a little non-linear. Not so much non-linear in terms of we cut from today to 2 days from now to 3 days before or something like that. It's all a straight line, but it's maybe not a straight line in the guy's head. So yeah, this was a great movie to to introduce to you at the start of this marathon, and we did two double features. We probably should have done a double feature on that night, but I think we were both getting tired.
Yeah. Either way, Videodrome was a good teaser to the rest of our weekend. And
definitely.
And some of the other movies that we saw, Maps to the Stars, I would highly recommend anyone to watch. I know that I know that Hawk, you expressed a little bit of interest on it. Where I would put Maps to the Stars is it's very much a satire.
Okay.
Now
it's kind of a tragic. I would call it a tragic comedy.
Yeah, you could say tragic comedy.
Google does list it as a comedy.
Mm-hmm. It's one of those movies where you may not know at times whether to laugh or to truly just pity the people involved. The movie's
or to both, yeah.
The movie's primary theme is about watching vapid Hollywood stars be vapid with each other and how that kind of impacts their culture and how that reflects upon the entire country and our civilization in general.
Considering that Hollywood is something that's lusted after, something that's put up on a pedestal, the people in Hollywood and Hollywood itself, and then you peel back the curtain and you see that these people are kind of assholes. Mm-hmm. It's like we revere them so much, but this is how they treat other people.
See, right. Now that has me interested because that kind of obsession with Hollywood is something that's really fascinating to me. Like, for example, somebody today on Reddit, they were really excited because they wrote a letter to Charlie Cox from Daredevil.
Oh, wow.
And Charlie Cox sent him an autographed picture.
Oh.
And it's like, you don't fucking know this guy. You didn't even meet him in person, and now you're like on cloud nine because this person that you do not know and who possibly had somebody do this for him sent you a picture.
Right.
And,
like that obsession with stars is so odd and fascinating to me.
Well, the mere fact that he responded at all is, certainly that's I have to say good on him, because not every celebrity would do that. And the ones featured in Maps to the Stars certainly would not do that.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I love interacting with celebrities when I can. Like I've tweeted recently, like in the past week, at both the comedian Aparna Nancherla and at Mark Osborne, the director of The Little Prince, and they both responded to me, and I was like, that's kind of cool. But it's not.
Well, I think the thing is, there's a difference between interacting with and revering as if they were some sort of a greater super being or a god. There's a lot of
because all I wanted to do was tell Mark Osborne that I loved his movie, and I don't care if he saw it or not, but I wanted to let him know. And then he responded. I told him that Little Prince is an amazing film and I love it, and he responded like with a very gracious thank you, and that like he was so happy that I told him that. But again, I
imagine if you had done that with your original Twitter username, Butthole Tampons.
He probably would not have responded. So it's good. It's good PR for me to have changed my handle to Real Hawk Ripjaw. As much as I miss the old one. But,
as opposed to the fake Hawk Ripjaw.
No, as opposed to Butthole Tampons.
I know. But yeah,
no, the Real Hawk Ripjaw. I did that because so many celebrities that's their handle is.
Right.
Real whatever. So it was kind of like now nobody else can have
a little joke within a joke.
Yeah, exactly.
And now the thing about Maps to the Stars, I'm gonna I don't want to give away too much of the story in it, because I think that experiencing it cold is a good way to go. But I will say that Maps to the Stars has a wonderful opening in which one of the main characters, who is a child star, walks into a hospital room, and it's a Make-A-Wish Foundation meeting where this kid is set up to meet this little girl who is dying. And
it's like a children's hospital kind of thing.
Yeah, children's hospital, right? And the kid walks in, and this celebrity, he's sort of easiest way to call it is like he's a child film celebrity who's sort of like if Justin Bieber was in acting or something.
He's like a modern day Macaulay Culkin.
Yeah.
That's not quite the drug phase. Maybe a little bit, but not quite there. He's more like the disillusioned Macaulay Culkin who's still doing crap movies,
and he's fresh out of he's fresh out of rehab too.
Modern Macaulay Culkin would be a great Cronenberg character.
Well, and that's
what you get. And he comes.
Explain what happens here.
So he sits down, and the first thing he says to this girl, who is dying, is, "So how'd you get AIDS?"
To which she responds,
"Oh, it's not AIDS. It's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma." Okay. To which the boy he looks perturbed. He turns around, looks at his handler. Handler's like, I don't know, and and kind of storms out on the kid a little bit, but complaining, what? No one told me non-Hodgkin's. What is that anyway? Non-Hodgkin's. You either are or you aren't.
So he found himself blindsided by a disease he didn't recognize, and that hurt his self-image of visiting these kids and getting on his high horse, so he just kind of left.
Right, he wasn't prepared for it, and anyway, so the girl dies, and he one of the things that recurs in the film is he's haunted by visions of this girl who says some pretty weird stuff to him, and the other main character in this film is Julianne Moore. And Julianne Moore is sort of on the opposite end of the spectrum in that rather than being a child star, she's a celebrity who is getting up in age, and she's reached that point as an actress where she's gotten to that age where she's not getting every role that she might look for just because she's slightly too old for the discriminating eyes of the industry.
Mm-hmm. And she do a vanity project.
Right, and there's a vanity project that she's wanting to do because because her mother, who she has serious mother issues with that I won't get into because it's
very serious. Yeah.
Yeah, serious mother issues with, was in this big Oscar-nominated movie back in the day, and she has an opportunity to play the same role that her mother did in a remake. And she's trying out for the part, and there's a big to-do about whether or not she's going to get the part, or even if she should get the part, because she's a little older than the character should be. And
so all of this is tied together by Mia Wasikowska, whose appearance in Hollywood kind of shakes to the core this family for some reason. We're not quite sure until near the end. But all we know is that she's kind of mysterious. She's got a scar on her face, so she has a past that we're not sure of yet. And she begins to work for Julianne Moore as her chore whore.
Yeah, that's literally what Julianne Moore calls it, by the way. Chore whore. Yeah, and also it's worth noting the movie also features a really solid performance from Robert Pattinson, which I know, Hawk, you'll cringe at because you haven't actually managed to see a good Robert Pattinson performance, I'm guessing.
I didn't hate Cosmopolis. I know a lot of people did, though.
Okay, well, he's very good in this. And then John Cusack plays the head of the family that the child actor is. He's the father. He's a TV psychologist, sort of in the Tony Robbins vein,
and a massage therapist at the same time.
Yeah, he has this thing where it's like a combination of massage therapy and psychology. And
psychotherapy.
Yeah, psychotherapy. And he sees Julianne Moore as a patient, and it's clearly he's a quack. They reveal very quickly that his problems are just as severe, and if not worse, than anyone he's supposedly treating.
So suffice to say, this movie has a lot going for it.
Yeah.
This is one of those movies that I feel John Waters would have a lot to talk about. He would talk about whenever he references Divine, his muse, he would say one of the genres of movies that he would like to watch with Divine were trash movies, specifically about rich people and their problems, or celebrities. He's like, he just loves that fucked up stuff with regards to famous people. He just loves it. He just dives into it. And so I was like, man, building with this kind of stuff. I mean, he would make it more empathetic, I think, because he actually identifies somewhat with these people. But at the same time, it would retain some of the Cronenbergian, but Cronenberg has that edge to this. That's that very sharp knife edge that kind of cuts deep. Tension wise, I would say this is almost like I said, tragic comedy before. Like it's not quite, it's satirical, but it's also quite tragic and dramatic. at the same time. This is also very different from the works of Bret Easton Ellis, the guy who's done American Psycho and
It sounds
other
very
movies of
much like Bret Easton Ellis. Like that was the first thing in
it
my head when you
does,
were describing
except it does, except his movies are usually, or adaptations are usually about
About what?
Usually about people who are empty and nihilistic and don't really
Oh,
feel
yeah.
much of anything.
And Bret Easton Ellis also has an operatic quality to his films, or not?
Yeah,
to his
soap operatic quality, I would say.
You're right. This, on the other hand, is more kind of brutal, and almost too real. Where you're like, yeah, I've seen these people. These are the people who show up on like third tier cable reality shows, and you know, it's almost painful to watch at times, and in a good way though.
I have a question. How was John Cusack in this movie?
He was great.
Oh,
was he?
He's a perfect fit for this character.
He wasn't chewing the scenery, but he was getting into it.
Because
he was really into it.
I became very disillusioned with John Cusack last month when my roommates and I watched Dragon Blade. Have you seen that movie?
No,
I have not seen that movie, but it's like...
Of course you'll be disillusioned by him in that movie.
You guys know about Dragon Blade, though, right?
No.
Yeah, of course. It's got Adrian Brody in it, right?
Yeah, so it's like a cross production between like 4 different countries. It's a war movie that's, it's got Jackie Chan as the main character. John Cusack plays a close friend / brother of him, and then Adrian Brody is the villain.
Okay. Yeah, I just looked it up. I have seen the trailer to this.
That is an amazing piece of shit, and you should totally watch it.
Wow. Yeah. I will look that up. Now, here's the thing. John Cusack, though, has also appeared in a couple of really... He was probably one of the things that kept Chirac from being a complete bloody mess.
Okay.
Well, I think I would give the movie more credit than that. That's just me personally. But yes, he did a very good job in Chirac. Very, very passionate. Able to deliver that particular monologue very well.
Yeah,
and boisterously.
Exactly.
Yes.
Well, in Chirac, his character is really kind of the moral center of the film, and he's based on a real life priest in Chicago, and it's actually a really fascinating performance. And then Love and Mercy, where he played the 1980s Brian Wilson, was also a solid performance.
Well, High Fidelity is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's just lately I've had to kind of... He's lost his Jeff Bridges lifetime pass, where I respect him no matter what he does because he's made some poor choices in the last couple of years. So
Jeff Bridges has lost the Jeff Bridges lifetime pass to an extent.
See, even R.I.P.D. couldn't really temper the.
Did you see
my
Seventh
love for
Son?
Jeff Bridges? What?
Did you see Seventh Son?
And Seventh Son, but see, here's the thing: in both of those movies. I think you could tell that Jeff Bridges made a choice to be in these films, and he was having fun because he was in those Uggs commercials a couple years ago. You remember those?
Yeah.
Where it was like just chilling out with Jeff Bridges, and it's like 10 seconds of him doing some random bullshit, hanging out with a with a man 20 years younger than him in his house. It was always so strange. And he did those sleeping tapes too. So I think Jeff Bridges just is doing whatever the fuck he wants now, and I still respect that, regardless.
That's true. And I will say that Jeff Bridges, he tried so hard to make The Giver not suck.
And he was the best part of The Giver by a significant margin.
Yeah.
You know what my favorite line of dialogue and delivery was in R.I.P.D., which wasn't a good movie and didn't have a lot of those good qualities that I'm about to mention, but it was from him. It was a scene where Jeff Bridges goes up to a door, knocks on the door, and he's like, "We suspect that you might be dead."
Yeah, like he's great.
That makes me laugh. That makes me laugh every fucking time I hear it. just out of context, out of nowhere, delivery. I suspect you might be dead.
I think it's the accent that does it.
I just can't wait to see Kingsman: The Golden Circle, in which he's apparently the head of the Statesmen.
Yes.
Yeah, they're like a bunch of cowboys or something. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think they're named after alcoholic drinks too. Those ones.
That sounds
Instead of the
awesome.
Knights of the Round Table, they're named after alcoholic drinks.
That'll be interesting.
All right, so now just to round out our Cronenberg discussion, with some of the other films we went over, when we saw The Dead Zone, the Christopher Walken movie from 1983, which is, in my opinion, one of the stronger Stephen King adaptations ever done. Now,
I would agree with that.
Now, The Dead Zone, first of all, Hawk, are you familiar with it?
Somewhat.
Do you know the basic concept?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Because I watched it back in a Cronenberg phase I had in college.
Right, and for those not familiar, Walken is basically he awakens from a coma after a violent accident to discover that he has powers of sight. Anyone whom he touches, yes, or in some cases later in the film when his power seems to grow, people who he's within a very short distance of, it seems to become more and more potent at that point. He's able to get an understanding of their future and their past. He can see into them. And
so this is the Stephen King story that ripped off the Twilight Zone font for the title, right?
Oh,
yeah, kind of. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing: The Dead Zone, the movie, is basically a Twilight Zone story put to film. The way it breaks down story wise. So essentially, what happens is Christopher Walken has this power of sight that he gains, and he uses it at first to. He uses it at first very begrudgingly. He because every time he sees into someone's mind, it hurts him, and it physically just starts to hamper his body. It takes a toll on him. But
he comes to an understanding that this could help people, and so he starts to slowly begin to do that. Like he helps out a sheriff solve a murder. And
not just a murderer,
he helps
catch a serial killer.
Yeah, and he helps a kid not die from a hockey game or something.
Which
falling through the ice. Yeah.
Which culminates in one of the most shared YouTube videos of Christopher Walken, in which Walken smashes a glass with a can and shouts, "The ice is gonna break!"
But he says it in a good way. He's not saying it like scene chewingly. He's saying it like with vigor, he's just very, very much like, no, dude, the ice is gonna fucking break. Don't let that kid out in the ice.
If Bill Leon is here and can hear us, we need his Christopher Walken impression for that line.
The ice is gonna break.
Perfect.
Yep, there you go.
There it is. And so the movie ends up culminating in this big epic thing that I saw on YouTube a while back. That's kind of I don't know if it's a meme, but it's been used often to describe cowardice in a hilarious way. It's that video where he's a sniper and he's about to shoot at Martin Sheen, who's a politician, and Martin Sheen grabs a baby and puts it in front of him and the sniper.
Yeah, essentially,
that's just floating around the internet.
I know we're getting into spoilers here, but we may as well. We've already broken the dam. We may as well go further. He discovers that this up-and-coming senatorial candidate is essentially going to be the next Hitler, and
he's going to start a thermonuclear war, basically,
for no reason other than he wants to.
It's his legacy to do, and. So Walken goes to his friend, and who's the doctor that treated him, and is like, dude, would you have killed Hitler right before he started doing all those horrible things? The doctor's like, well, as a doctor, I'm obligated to help those in need. I'm obligated to life and to sustain life. So hell yes, I would. I'd kill the bastard. So Walken,
says, the son of a bitch or something.
The son of a bitch. Yeah, the son of a bitches.
Yeah,
no, that's a Samurai Cop reference. No, he goes out. So he goes out, gets the rifle, and out as it does in the YouTube video. He shoots. He misses a couple times. The guy picks up a baby, specifically the baby of his ex-girlfriend, and uses it as a human shield. And then he gets shot. Walken gets shot, and he eventually succumbs to his mortal wounds, but not before touching the senator, the senatorial candidate one more time to discover that the guy is going to kill himself in shame for having picked up the baby and used it as a human shield. So Walken is satisfied by that, and he's like, you know what? I did my job. I'm done. That's good. That's good enough. You're gonna kill yourself. That stops the war. Fine.
Yeah, this is a solid thriller. What I like about The Dead Zone is it uses a very simple sci-fi concept to build on to kind of build on a very nice twisty story. And even if you've already had the twist spoiled for you, it's worth watching because the performances are so solid. Christopher Walken is great in it. Anthony Zerbe and Martin Sheen are great in it. If you don't know Anthony Zerbe, he's best known as the guy who's in roles that Jon Voight turned down.
He played the bad guy, the mad scientist in Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park.
Yes, that's right.
What?
Devereaux in Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park.
He's that guy. Yeah, he's that boring villain who was he was dreaming it all up in the end.
He's also in Star Trek Insurrection,
spoilers.
The Matrix Reloaded, American Hustle, James
been in a
Bond
lot
with
of
License
stuff.
to Kill. Yeah, he's a solid actor. He's in a great deal of stuff.
Wait, which James Bond villain was he?
Oh, in License to Kill, he's the white guy who is underneath Robert Davi. He's what's his name? Like Milton Crest is his name. He's the guy who has like the submarine and everything.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I like License to Kill.
Yeah, he's the guy who gets exploded in the decompression chamber, if you remember that.
Yeah,
We
him.
all live on an exploding
That
submarine.
movie does not get enough love.
Oh, yeah. It was still, to this day, one of the best Bond moments is when he discovers Felix chewed up and spat out by a shark, and a sign posted to him that says he disagreed with something that ate him.
Yes.
My only problem with the Dead Zone was its vignettes. You know, it wasn't really like a. I mean, the plot still worked, the story still worked as a through line. It's just it felt more like a miniseries truncated into a movie.
Which, of course, it became a TV series in the 90s.
Which, of course, became a TV series. Yes, it's still a good movie. It's still a very fun and worth watching movie. It's just, or had it been building up to this main conflict as opposed to having several mini conflicts.
I do agree it's episodic, and my understanding is that the Stephen King novel is even more episodic. That it's
which makes sense. It's a book,
right.
You know?
Like, how long is the book? Do we know?
Probably fucking 700 pages.
So I was kind of like looking at Stephen King's
428. It's actually not that big.
428. Yeah, because it is like 1,300 pages, which is like Bible size. Like it's as long as the Bible.
Mhm.
It.
Yeah, and it's a 1979 Stephen King book, so it's prior to King's really big coke habit. I mean, I'm sure he had cocaine on his mind during this time, but it took
This
him
is
years to
before
get
that
Scare
over
the
really-
hell out of you.
This is before
That's,
it got
my
really
favorite.
bad.
The Maximum Overdrive trailer, that's my favorite line, is when he goes, "I'm gonna scare the hell out of you."
and he's just bleeding sweat. Just like
Oh,
pouring on his face.
that's such a good movie.
Oh yeah,
That's
the
how-
movie's great.
That's how we concluded Saturday. And we moved on to Sunday with Zach. The three of us, Zach, Ken, and myself, watched the two S's in the Cronenberg catalog, Shivers, which was his feature film debut, and then Scanners, which is
The movie where
for
the
some
guy's
reason
head
revered
explodes.
by with the head explosion that no one can figure out how he did it.
Scanners.
So I think we should.
Well, you know what? Let's start with getting Scanners out of the way, because I don't want to end on a down note.
Okay, Scanners was the oddball here. This was like we started the whole thing with Videodrome, which is to me is like 5-star material, and then we kind of went. There's like this if there's like a graph or like a statistical chart or something, it's while all these movies are good in their own way, it was definitely going downhill from there.
Yeah, I would say that
And Scanners was the bottom,
Yeah.
the absolute bottom of this
Scanners
pit.
is the movie that everyone talks about and says, oh, it's this great old like kind of horror psychological kind of movie, and you know what it is boring.
It's the dullest movie. The main mad scientist guy, or not mad scientist, but the scientist guy in charge, scientist man, the guy who's he's leading this project about and he's in charge. He's at this corporation where they have a project involving
psychics
called scanners, they've codenamed scanners, who are like psychics, but they can also control things with their minds and make people explode. And depending on their power, they can
make people do things that they wouldn't ordinarily do. For instance, there's a scene in which one of the scanners forces a man to commit suicide by shooting himself in the head.
Yes, there's a lot of mental trickery that they can do, and depending on their power range, they can do even more damage. They can tap into computers maybe and stuff like that. Well, this guy spends most of the movie just kind of talking in pseudoscience terms and also talking in a very low voice.
There are a lot of scenes of people having conversations in offices in this movie.
Yes, a lot of office talk, a lot of warehouse talk, a lot of loud big spaces where there's a lot of void, so the voices kind of boom off of walls. Yes. And so there's a lot of white noise in this movie where it just kind of makes you want to go to sleep.
Which if you had like solid lead performances that kept you interested through that the problem is the main star of the film is an actor named Stephen Lack, and Lack is a great way. This is one of the most wooden fucking performances I've ever seen, to the point where some of the line readings are damn amateurish. It's like
he's not just dull. Sometimes he reads lines like a 6-year-old.
Right. As
like
if he's reading infamous off of a friggin' script, like right there in the room.
Favorite line delivery of his, which is to say, worst line delivery of his, was at the end when he says, "I don't like that guy. I'm glad he's dead."
Yeah. Oh god.
He says it like that, and we just, Ken and I and Zach just busted out laughing, like, "What the fuck is this guy doing?
Yeah.
And what the fuck is Cronenberg doing hiring him?
And
what did he see in him?
Even worse is
George Lucas hiring."
Yeah, this is a movie that also has Michael Ironside as the main villain. Why he's in this movie for very little time, considering that he's the most interesting thing this movie is going for it.
And he does a good job for the time he's in it.
Oh yeah, and this movie is not without I can see why people are impressed by this movie. It has some great gore effects. I mean, the head exploding scene is great. The movie has an amazing finale in which the main character and Michael Ironside have a mental battle with each other, and they go really heavy into the
body horror and
like veins start popping out of their body. And
very impressively, those effects were top notch. Like it was practical, but it made you think, like, how did they actually pull that off?
But honestly, I would just Google that ending sequence and I would watch that rather than rewatch this movie.
No point in watching the movie. It's really bad. It's just dull, really. It's not like it was. Like, there's a lot of footage, like we see a scene where Stephen Lack, the main character, walks up. He's going to a set of stairs. He walks up the set of stairs, and then he goes into an office. From him entering the room to the office, there's a lot of unnecessary filmmaking technique going on here. Stuff that could have just been taken out one time, and it wouldn't have mattered. In fact, it would have sped things up.
I'm going to go ahead and quote the Clint Eastwood movie Heartbreak Ridge. "You can run me, you can starve me, you can beat me, and you can kill me. Just don't bore me."
For real. This was kind of a chore to watch. We were chore whores for Scanners.
It's too bad, because Scanners was the one I was looking forward to the most, because it's been built up all these years as, this kind of underground master. It even has a Criterion Collection release.
And I will definitely have to rewatch it because I remember enjoying it. But maybe maybe I enjoy the concept more than I enjoyed the film. So that's
the concept is very cool. Don't get me wrong.
And I think under the right conditions, maybe if we were in a really lively mood, the movie might have been able to skirt by on that concept. It was just it had to be bad timing that we just couldn't get into it.
So here's a fun piece of trivia for the movie. Is that a few years ago, Darren Lynn Bousman, who directed the middle chunk of the Saw movies and a few other things, was going to direct a remake of Scanners.
That would've been cool.
It was going to be written by, I think, Aaron Kruger, which
Now,
should make...
Scanners is a movie that could be remade because it's got enough of a concept that a remake...
Well, here's the thing, is that, well, first of all, Aaron Kruger was going to write it, and he sucks. And second of all, Boseman wouldn't want to do it. I think I'm pronouncing his name wrong, but it doesn't matter. He was not going to do it unless unless Cronenberg said, yes, you can do this. And he did not say that. So the remake has not been made.
So to end our Cronenberg conversation, before we saw Scanners, we saw his very first theatrical feature. Apparently, he did a few student films prior to this that were technically of theatrical length, but his first theatrical feature film, Shivers, which is it's a French-Canadian movie from 1975. And the original shooting title of the movie, by the way, which I think says a lot more about what the movie's about, Orgy of the Blood Parasites.
Yes, which is kind of a cooler title. Shivers boils it down, but Orgy of the Blood Parasites is something I would totally see in a drive-in.
And it tells you exactly what the movie is. It's an exploitation film.
It pretty much is. And maybe it's making a comment on exploitation. I don't know. But I may have to watch it again, which I would gladly. This is a fun movie.
Yeah, Shivers, by the way, was produced by Ivan Reitman.
There you go, yeah. I described this movie as Night of the Living Dead on Spanish fly pills.
Yeah, Night of the Living Dead rocking Viagra.
Right, like we're literally describing what the whole movie is, and that's basically parasites infect bodies, human bodies. The idea is these parasites could essentially turn into an organ and replace an organ in the body and control those functions and creating a symbiotic relationship with the host. But instead, the parasites just kind of make people go crazy, specifically sex crazy.
Yeah. And
everyone just has a giant orgy.
And the best part is anyone who gets fucked gets the parasite passed on to them. So it's viral in that way. So
it's an STD parable as well as a virginity parable.
And the entire movie takes place in this high-rise flat, not unlike the movie High Rise, by the way. It is
separated by the mainland on an island.
Yeah, it's a kind of an island high-rise that is advertised at the very beginning during the opening credits as kind of a new paradise, a high-tech apartment flat building. And, they have all the comforts of home that you could expect, all within this one building. And, of course, that is the perfect catalyst for a movie in which that takes place entirely within this apartment building, in which people come down with essentially rape fever.
Pretty much. I mean, the movie, that's literally like what it all culminates in, is this giant orgy. And we don't necessarily see a lot of nudity. There is some.
There's a good amount for the 70s, is what I'll say.
There's a fair amount, but it's not like they're just walking around naked the entire time. It's building up to it, and about halfway through, that's when the shit hits the fan. Mm-hmm. And there's a doctor who has an office in this high-rise. It's like he's an on-duty, and the whole movie, he's very casual. In fact, everyone in this movie is pretty casual about everything they're told regarding the parasites. That's
what adds to the bizarre nature of this film, is how so many people take the news that that an epidemic of rape and in their building is like, they take it very well. You don't see a lot of people make the decision to, hey, we got to get off of this island.
They're more like, yeah, man, parasites, whatever, bro.
Or they try to solve it within the building rather than getting the fuck out.
Right, like the doctor's like, I'll go look into it. Whatever.
This is by no means like a classy movie. This movie is pure exploitation.
No, there's no. This doesn't have class.
Exactly.
It's not a classy film.
You know what?
but-
It might have that kind of class if you're going.
David Cronenberg has no class.
Yeah, it's
Yes,
actually.
you know?
Can you believe it? Can you believe it?
You said it so perfectly, Bill. That was the perfect accent.
It is worth noting, by the way, that one of the main characters in this film is a dead ringer, just dead ringer for
Cronenberg reference.
what's that? Oh yeah, dead ringers.
Yeah, but this guy is a dead ringer for
Adam Driver.
Yes, one of the victims is a. He looks just like Adam Driver and kind of acts like him in some
And
ways.
in some scenes,
talks
he
like him.
sounds like him. Yeah,
Yes,
it's like
and the whole movie, he's basically treating his wife like she's annoying, which she is. She's just constantly needy and constantly weeping.
she's also
Adam Driver.
What's that?
Swayed to the dark side of the force. Adam Driver. Fake news.
Yeah, when Bill and Zach and I were watching Shivers, though, we made so many Adam Driver references because it was just it was impossible not to. And the best part is that he's one of the characters who goes through this parasitic thing in the most grotesque of ways, and so
it just made it that much more palpable.
Oh yeah.
There's a great line by an old lady. There's this character who's like delivering food or something to the different apartments or to a apartment, and on his way, this old lady opens the door and goes, "I'm hungry for love."
Shivers was a lot of fucking fun. It's a movie that I would not I would not be surprised if it showed up on Best of the Worst in Red Letter Media as one of their highlight.
They're better movies, yeah.
So with that, we'll put a pin on David Cronenberg for now.
I'd love to do another marathon sometime down the road. Maybe not have more Cronenberg films, but just a different director series.
Yeah, one thing we talked about, and I'm sure Bill Leon might want to be interested in getting in on this. We talked about doing a marathon of the films of Ken Russell.
Oh, I'm down with that. Ken and I are going to do some SNL movies next week.
Yes, for next week, Bill, Leon, and I are going to watch It's Pat and Stuart Saves His Family.
It's Pat is a pretty funny movie.
I won't be able to watch those with you, but I might catch those on the low key and be able to.
These are SNL sketches that are before my time, and
I loved It's Pat.
The only reason I know about It's Pat is because I'm a fan of the band Ween, and I know that they have a cameo in the film.
And,
they do.
And you weren't even familiar with the Stewart Daily Affirmation sketch until I didn't the other day.
I know. I'm more familiar with Al Franken as a senator than I am as a comedian.
Well, that just shows your age. I mean, when I was a little kid, I would watch these skits on Comedy Central reruns. So I'm pretty familiar with these movies, and I remember when they came out too. I was like, "Oh my god, the It's Pat movie is out! I love that character. It's so weird." I've been like that character. Like, what bathroom do I use?
That was the best impression.
And Stewart, on the other hand, is great because it's the classic example of just depression comedy where he's this motivator, and his entire thing is about helping people and making people feel better when he is a completely he's a complete social mess.
Isn't that also the premise of The Ladies' Man?
I've not seen The Ladies' Man.
So I wouldn't want to see The Ladies' Man.
I watched it. I rented it. I didn't see it in the theater, but I rented it on home video out of curiosity. I think it was around the time Will Ferrell was starting to get big, and I saw that he was in it.
I think it came out a year or two after Night of the Roxbury.
Yeah, that
they wanted to cash in on some more of that momentum they had.
Yeah, right. Yeah. From those movies.
Superstar.
So oh, God. That was a good skit. I don't think it was a good movie, but sometimes you get.
I've never watched that one. I
know Tom Green's in it, and he plays like a bully or something.
So. When Tom Green could be in movies with budgets.
Well, the band Ween has a cameo in It's Pat.
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
Sure.
Bill mentioned that. Yeah, that's.
However, I don't. Yeah, I don't think they went out for that. I don't. Maybe they did. I don't know. You think they like held casting calls like '90s popular bands? It's down to we're down to Blind Melon, Ween, and
let's throw that
Korn.
band in that sings that song about pork roll, egg, and cheese.
No, is that the song they play in the film?
Pretty sure it is.
I think you're right. Yeah, I think that is the one.
All right, so
I can't wait for you guys to watch it. It's Pat. There's so many great creepy scenes in that movie.
I've heard about Charles Rocket in the film, and that's kind of what pushed me over the edge.
Yeah, like I don't know if that guy plays the neighbor guy in the movie who's just obsessed with finding out Pat's gender.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole movie, literally the thrust of the movie is this guy trying to find out. And he's so obsessed with it, he goes to all these different means. He's like, take off your pants, Pat. You know, it's just so
He starts dressing like Pat at one point.
It's a good movie. It's a good movie.
all right, so we need to move along a little bit. So we'll go ahead and Hawk and I saw a movie as part of our. We've agreed to try to see at least one movie to talk about each week. And we chose the Clint Eastwood movie High Plains Drifter, or rather I chose it for this week.
Yeah, you chose it. So we're trying to, every week,
Yeah,
instead of one
chose
person,
the Western movie.
instead of one person seeing a movie and talking about it for a while, I wanted to establish some more back and forth. So I thought, why don't we go each week, one of us suggests a movie and it alternates. So
Right.
It was Ken's week, and he chose the Clint Eastwood starring and directed film High Plains Drifter for reasons that he would not reveal to me, but insisted that I would really get into.
Mhm.
And I did. And it was interesting when he suggested it because as you guys know, Westerns are difficult for me to get into. And High Plains Drifter starts in the first 10 minutes, and I'm like, okay, it's a Western with Clint Eastwood, just like the dozen other ones that he made in that same vein.
Yeah.
But then it turns into something distinctly different around the halfway point and becomes very interesting.
I wouldn't even say halfway point. This is a movie that establishes very early on that it's not quite going to break down the way you might expect a traditional Western to. Because in the first scene in the movie, Clint Eastwood rides into town, and like a typical Western, you have him ride into a town, goes into a bar, and these good old boys start insulting him.
Just some good old boys.
He proceeds to gun them down in cold blood. And then, this is where it gets fucked up, suddenly a woman in town kind of insults him, like bumps into him, and starts shouting him down. And the first thing Clint Eastwood says after that is, like, he insinuates that she's coming on to him, and he proceeds to drag her into a fucking barn and rape her.
So that was where the movie started to lose me. I was like, okay, so why is the protagonist... What?
This happens in the first, 10 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
That's where it lost you. Okay.
Oh, no, it started to lose me. I stuck with it because I was like, why is the protagonist raping people?
Yeah, it's a fucked up opening to a movie, and it's a movie that unsettles you when you watch it because you're like, is he supposed to be our hero?
Yeah, exactly. That was exactly my response to that. And then as the movie goes on, it comes to show that no, he really isn't supposed to be the hero.
Not only that, but no one in this movie is really a hero. The long and short of this plot...
Hey, Mordecai is the hero.
Okay, I will say Mordecai is one of the closer things. Mordecai, let me just go into the plot a little bit. This small town in the middle of the West, in an unnamed location, is called Lago, and it's a mining town on the edge of this lake.
Mar-a-Lago?
Just Lago, Lago.
Oh, okay.
It was filmed in the where was it?
Mono Lake in California.
California, yeah.
Filmed at Mar-a-Lago.
So Mono Lake is a saltine. It's a sailing lake. It's saltine lake. There's crap.
Saltine Lake.
Yes.
The best lakes filled with crackers.
But it's a desert lake and it's sailing in content and nearly dead. So anyway, so the town of Lago, though, built on the shores of this lake, it's a very desolate looking town. It's clearly a boom town because the buildings are much newer than the surroundings. And the stranger rides into the town and proceeds to kind of treat everyone in town like shit. And everyone in the town seems to want to get on his good side because they want him to help them defend the town against some people who they know are going to be riding into town looking for revenge. Go ahead.
The men that Clint Eastwood killed at the beginning of the film were the last line of defense against these antagonists.
Yes, exactly. And it turns out that the entire town is deep within the depths of this horrible murder conspiracy where they stood and watched as the town's marshal was brutally whipped to death by 3 killers, who they then essentially they allowed these killers to do it because they knew that this marshal was going to end the mine, because the mine was on government territory, and they were going to have their claims taken away from them. So the entire town conspired to have this marshal killed, and then they got these 3 killers thrown in jail.
So now that they're out of jail, they want revenge on the town for turning them in.
And so right from the beginning, literally everyone in this town is culpable for homicide and is not a very good person. And over the course of the film, which I'll go ahead and we may as well go into some spoilers because this is a movie that I'm sure most people won't seek out, although I recommend they do. Over the course of the film, you begin to realize that everyone in this town has built their own personal hell around them. And the stranger, played by Clint Eastwood, not only does he play along with that, he nurtures it to the point where eventually he convinces the entire town to paint the town red and change the name of the town to Hell.
I want to go back a little bit because when the sheriff is begging the stranger to help protect them against the gangsters.
Yes,
he's like, "We'll give you anything you want," and he looks back. He's like, "Anything?" And so he basically gets an unlimited. What?
Give me all of your women.
No, he does that too, but he basically. The town gives him an unlimited line of credit on anything in the town he wants, which he abuses ferociously, not only getting new boots and all kinds of stuff, but also buying a round of drinks for everybody in the town. So he's basically just fucking everybody over by doing free shit for everything. And there's this, and
in the midst of doing this, the weakest person in the town is a little person named Mordecai, who is probably the closest thing to a protagonist this movie has, because he, while he hid and watched as the marshal was murdered, he was the only one who showed any real sympathy for the situation, and he literally was the only one who really couldn't do anything about it, even if he wanted to.
Well, there was that one lady too who wanted to do something, and her husband held her back.
Right, her too, and she's the one who gets raped, by the way, which is questionable. But
yeah,
this is a 1970s movie, and some of the sexual politics are you kind of wonder about, but ultimately it makes sense within the context of the fact that everyone in this town is responsible in some way for what happened. So Clint Eastwood makes Mordecai both the sheriff and the mayor of the town.
Right, right in front of the sitting mayor.
And
the sitting sheriff. He's like, you know what? It's time for a new sheriff. And he just like takes the badge off the dude's chest and hands it to Mordecai. So you're the sheriff now. And now this guy with dwarfism is now like Clint Eastwood's right hand man, and it's awesome.
Right, and it's between the two of them, they literally paint the town red, and then the bad guys ride into town, and when that happens, Clint Eastwood made an effort to make the townspeople think that he was helping to set up an ambush to get them before they get into town, when in reality he just lets the guys ride into town and shoot the place up and fuck everyone over, only to turn up, and because these guys ultimately did murder the marshal, he proceeds to brutally kill them. One he whips to death, another he hangs, and he guns the last one down in this beautifully shot sequence at night where the entire town is burning to the ground.
Yeah, it was very. It kind of solidified this point in the film where everything had descended right into hell. So it was a great aesthetic to see all this happening with everything on fire.
And then the final reveal of the film is that Mordecai, as Eastwood's character is riding out of town, Mordecai says just kind of casually, I never did get your name. And Eastwood says, yeah, you did. He rides out of town, and the camera pans down on the name of the marshal's grave, and you see as Eastwood rides off into the desert and disappears.
So the implication is that the stranger is some sort of reincarnation of the marshal back for vengeance.
Right. Now, there's a lot of interpretations as to the ending, but ultimately my belief is that his character, that the marshal, went to hell and he comes back basically as a demon. Because
I think it's a good one. But that's a thing, though, is that the only reason I kind of push back against that is that the marshal, in his he has almost no dialogue, but he was kind of framed as a character who was very, very
righteous.
Righteous, yeah, that's a good word for it. He was well intentioned, like, with the mine being owned by the government and him standing to take that away from the townspeople. He kind of was framed as a person who had his mind set on good, on doing the right thing. So I don't know if he came. I think that maybe not. He didn't go to hell, but he's just a restless spirit.
You could say that. A restless spirit capable of...
He hasn't found his place yet. He hasn't found his final destination.
Yeah, it is a strange and unusual movie for a Western, and that's why I recommended it, because I know, Hawk, that you are not as interested in Westerns, but I knew that this would be a twist on it that would intrigue you.
The other thing that's worth noting is that the marshal is played by Buddy Van Horn, who is Clint Eastwood's longtime stunt double. So they do look very similar to each other, which kind of fuels the reincarnation theory.
Yes. Buddy Van Horn, for those who don't know, he's a stunt coordinator in film, and he's also directed a few movies, too. He has been Eastwood's stunt double since the 1950s.
Yes.
And it's pretty amazing. I mean, the dude's like 87 years old, and I guess he retired a couple of years ago, but he keeps saying that, if Eastwood needs him, he's there. So
nice.
Anyway, so
yeah, that's cool.
We've completed our talk on that, and now, Hawk, you do have an assignment to complete. You need to tell me what movie I need to see for next Wednesday.
Yeah, and I'll let you know. I've got a couple. It's coming down to like 2 different ones, but I'll let you know. Probably soon. Although I will not be at next Wednesday's recording, unfortunately.
All right.
But I'll still give you a movie to watch. So as far as myself, I talked about this before we started recording, but I have not seen Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy since it came out.
Oh.
No, since it came out. Okay. Well, I watched Fellowship, I watched most of Two Towers, and I did not see the entirety of Return of the King. I have only seen pieces of Return of the King. This is because I was very young. I was a teenager, and I didn't really get it. Like, it's like, the movies look cool, but I don't really know what's going on, so I'm gonna not, I'm not really invested in it. But then I kind of came across a lot of Lord of the Rings lore and trivia for the movies. I'm a huge... You what?
I said lore of the Rings?
Lore. I came across some lore of the Rings.
Some Peter lore of the Rings.
Yes.
Okay, now we're pushing it. But I'm a huge nut for movie trivia, and when I learned that every piece of armor and chainmail in the Lord of the Rings movies was handmade with its own individual piece of story and backstory, I was like, okay, I have to fucking watch these. So I've been going through the trilogy. I watched Fellowship of the Ring last week or a couple weeks ago, and then this past weekend, I watched The Two Towers. And The Two Towers is a very entertaining movie. It's like I was messaging Ken as I was watching it, and he solidified this, that the Two Towers has a fantastic second act. because there's so much that happens in there. One of my favorite parts is when the king, what's his name again? Theoden?
Theoden. Mm-hmm.
Theoden is possessed by Saruman, and Gandalf comes in with his staff, and he's like, looks like an old man and stuff, and then the king's like, "Oh, you have no power here, bitch," and then Gandalf is
in
like,
those exact words.
"Yeah, exactly." And Gandalf is like, "No, fuck you," and he throws off his robe and his blinding white robes, and the king's like, "Ah!" And then the power comes out of him, and Saruman no longer has his hold. Like, that's just fucking badass. Especially because Gandalf gets spanked at every possible moment in the Fellowship of the Ring.
You may want to clarify that. He gets spanked.
Well,
he gets fucking bitch slapped at every possible
okay, all right, I got you
moment in Fellowship. The Balrog kills him. He falls off the cliff at that point. They're having the magic battle with Saruman, and when he gets kidnapped or captured. He has another magic battle on the mountain with Saruman, which he also loses. Basically, he has a really bad time throughout most of Fellowship of the Ring, and then in Two Towers, he gets to be a badass.
And let's not forget, also associated with the plot of King Theoden, is Grima Wormtongue, played by Brad Dourif.
Yes.
Who is in my opinion, really the highlight of the movie, because he's the man who, through the power of Saruman, he enchants the king and kind of takes over. And what's great about it is he plays this scummy, just cruel, grotesque of a character who still, even as horrible as he is, he has a somewhat empathetic reason for doing what he does, in that he has a secret longing for the king's daughter. And it's like this thing that he's never, he knows that she will always be out of his league. And he does it for this pathetic reason, just because he wants to win the love of a woman who will never love him. And
right.
it's great because Brad Dourif is just a great theatrical performer, and his character is wonderful to watch at every turn.
Yeah, no, he is absolutely great, and his just lack of hygiene and his sliminess is so fun.
Who'd have thought that a character named Grima Wormtongue would be grotesque?
I know, right? One of my hangups when I first watched the trilogy back in the day was kind of Peter Jackson carries over a morsel of his distinct campiness into these movies. But watching it now that have matured a little bit, it's so wonderfully measured and so perfectly executed in these movies that it makes for these fantastic moments. Like when they're in the marshes with Gollum, and Frodo is drawn to this corpse in the water, and the corpse opens its eyes. It's like a great what the fuck moment. And then Frodo topples face first into the marsh, and then this ghost monster is reaching towards him, and it was so distinctly Peter Jackson, that scene, and it was a lot of fun. And then Ken, you and I were talking about the Battle of Helm's Deep, which is a spectacular sequence, and it's got just enough campiness and enough excess that it's so fun to watch.
Yes, and I would argue that it's the superior large battle in Lord of the Rings, because that, and then of course when the Ents, the tree people, attack Saruman, that whole sequence is great. I think Return of the King got a little bit too video gamey.
Yeah, I do remember the one of the scenes I watched at Return of the King was Legolas just being a total god mode badass, like riding on the Nazgul flying person thing and
taking down the same elephants that you'll be seeing in King Arthur this weekend.
Exactly, the Oliphants, right? That's what they're called, right? Oliphants.
The Timothy Oliphants.
The Timothy Oliphants. Yeah, like, and then Legolas has always bugged me because he's just too good at everything.
Well, Legolas and Gimli Gimli, whatever.
Gimli, I think.
Yeah, they both have no character. They are
Gimli cracks me up. I know he's a little bit too goofy, but I totally lost it in the Two Towers when you have a pan along the wall of Helm's Deep and all the soldiers standing there, and then all of a sudden you see Gimli at waist height of everybody else, and he can't see over the wall. He's like, this is just the right spot for me, like very sarcastically. And then Legolas picks him up like a toddler to let him get a view of the orcs coming to Helm's Deep.
Right. That it makes for a funny moment, but like those two characters, they are just like cardboard cutout Dungeons and Dragons cards, basically.
They are, but they have such a great interplay. Like during that same battle, they are keeping track of their kill counts to outdo each other.
Yeah, which they, by the way, do again in Return of the King. Because that movie's nothing if not a repeat of everything you saw in the last movie.
So we'll see how much I like Return of the King, but Two Towers I had a great time with. I don't know what else there is to say about it. It's just like I enjoyed it a lot, and I'm excited to see Return of the King. And then once I've watched all three of these, renting on Amazon or seeing on demand or something, I'm going to attempt to track down the extended versions, if not just purchase them outright, because I can find them for under $50 on Amazon. Just to see what the extended versions do.
It's definitely worth watching the extended versions and actually the special features, because the special features have so much detail that goes into the process of how the movies are made.
That's kind of why I want to get the discs, because it's weird. The extended versions are not available for rental or streaming pretty much anywhere. You have to buy them for $17 to $19 each. Mm-hmm. So I kind of want to buy them on disc because I'll be able to watch all. I'm not going to spend $20 to buy a movie that's over a decade old, unless I get a little more to go with it, namely the special features.
All right, and so now that we've talked over that, now I know, Bill, that you were wanting to talk about rat film. I think we should save that for next weekend because other than King Arthur, there really isn't much coming out.
Yeah, no problem.
The other movie next week is Snatched. I don't think any of us are going to see that.
No.
Ew. Well, hey, Bill, what would Donald Trump say about Snatched?
He already said it on that bus with Billy Bush.
I would say Snatched is 2 letters away from a good movie.
Okay. Right.
So,
what?
Guy Ritchie's Snatch.
Oh,
right. Guy Ritchie makes great films.
Who ironically has a movie, or coincidentally, not ironically.
Yeah, you say Guy Ritchie makes great films about, 2 days before King Arthur comes out?
Oh, yes, I can't wait.
Guy Ritchie made good films.
Yes.
I will wait to see how things go, I mean,
Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels
is a great freaking movie.
Isn't Guy Ritchie making some remake here in a couple of years?
He's going to make a remake of The Art of the Deal.
He is. Oh no! Yeah, Guy Ritchie's directing Aladdin.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Is that so? Okay.
Yeah, they're holding open casting calls in London.
Who can they cast as the genie and not piss people off?
I don't know.
Well,
I think, and no matter who you cast, people are going to get mad about it.
It's not Robin Williams. Figure out a way to bring him back and play the role again.
So
yeah, I think.
So here's the thing. Every single one of these Disney movies has gotten by on pure nostalgia. I'm basically doing what the previous film did, and without differentiating itself that much. So, if you're gonna have another genie, they're probably going to cast a similarly eccentric actor / comedian.
Oh, please don't make Robert Downey Jr. the genie.
No, they're not going to do that.
Why not?
Nathan Lane?
They're going to go with T.J. Miller.
Oh, God.
Oh, God, you're so fucking right.
Oh, my God.
T.J. Miller will play this part. He will do the best of jobs.
Listen, I can't do a good... T.J. Miller's hard to impersonate. That seems like a difficult impression to pull off.
While T.J.
I was trying to do Trump.
Right, I'm saying I was thinking about trying to do it, and I'm like, how the hell would you do a T.J. Miller impression? I don't actually see him.
It'd be like a mix of Napoleon Dynamite with
Someone on coke.
Someone on coke, yeah.
Napoleon Dynamite did coke. That's T.J. Miller.
So hey, who wants to bet in advance that Aladdin is going to star a bunch of white people in brown face?
Actually, I believe they said that they're going to be very careful about.
I heard that too.
Oh fuck! I just looked at IMDb. Will Smith is rumored to be the genie.
Oh, okay. So this is going to go for full Winter's Tale then.
Yes,
how would that work? Like,
is
he going to sing the song? Is he going to sing the song?
Oh no! It's going to be a rap.
You've got a friend in me. DJ Jazzy Jeff, ladies and gentlemen.
So this is my story.
DJ Jazzy Jeff lives in Delaware, and like he's a cool dude. So I don't want to insult DJ Jazzy Jeff, but it's a good throwback joke to Will Smith's career.
This is my story about how my life got turned upside down and how I got.
Somebody rubbed my lamp, and now I'm here. That's it.
Yeah,
that's not a good rap.
My Suicide Squad on Blu-ray. It won an Oscar.
It did.
Suicide Squad, it deserved it. It was the best costumes.
Oscar-winning Suicide Squad.
So speaking of Suicide Squad, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2
is a movie that all of us saw, did we not?
Yes, we did.
Yes, I saw it just a few hours ago, yeah.
I bought the T-shirt, and you can't see it right now because everybody's cameras are off, but it's a good T-shirt. I like it.
So, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, first of all, I'm going to ask the big question. Was it better than the first movie?
Yeah.
Bill A., is it better than the first movie?
I would say it was equally as good, which is to say they're both great.
Hawk, what do you think? Better than the first movie?
I would say that the first movie was slightly better. Some of the novelty of what made the first one great has worn off a bit, and it wasn't quite the same, but that is not to say that this is A, the funniest movie Marvel has made so far, and B, possibly the best sequel after The Winter Soldier.
Bill Leon, better than the first movie?
Yes, but that's not to desecrate the first movie because it's still good. I just we'll get into why I think that is, I guess, in the discussion.
I think Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is, in structure and pure filmmaking, a superior film to the first one in that it has first of all, it has a villain that you give a shit about.
Yes.
Who represents a genuine threat and doesn't feel like a cutout character. It feels like someone who fits within... here's the thing. My problem with the first movie is the villain Ronan feels like we can't put Thanos in this movie yet. It'd be too early. So let's put a person who's basically Thanos, but not Thanos. That's what I felt about the first villain. He's a world conqueror, but he's not quite on the level of Thanos. He defers to Thanos because we can't put him in the movie yet.
Well, they also teased Peter Quill's father at the end of the first one.
Yeah, I know they teased him, but
the fact is, in story evolution, they have a villainous character who kind of tricks everybody, and at the same time has kind of his own little arc. You know, he has his own story going on and his own reason for doing the things that he's going to do. So that makes it even more sweeter. Is that there's that added layer to it, that it's not just a villain of the week. This is actually someone with, pathos? Represents great, yes, and pathos, and represents great consequences for the Guardians.
Yes. So let's get into the story a bit. Guardians Volume 2. What I really enjoyed in this movie is how it picks up kind of, it seems like it picks up a few adventures into the Guardians story, and where they're in the process.
It's supposed to be like 3 or 4 months later.
Yeah, I was going to say, I read online, I think this was like a YouTube comment or something, but they said this takes place in 2014. like Civil War hasn't happened yet, and so it's kind of oddly placed chronologically. But I don't think it feels very much like they picked up
like a few months after the Battle of Xandar.
Yeah,
a few months after that, the novelty of that victory hasn't worn off on the Guardians yet, and so now they're beginning to use that notoriety to gain other jobs and other heroics.
And so they're going around the galaxy basically as paid mercenaries for hire, under the guise of they're there to protect, but really they're still kind of crooks, or at least one of them is.
So the opening credits of the film.
This was a great sequence.
I instantly just the movie just had me right there, because I knew that a lot of people in the theater were probably like, I want to see this fight, and I was like, it's so brilliant that they're just focusing on Baby Groot dancing and they're not like all over this fight.
To me, that was James Gunn saying, everyone loved Baby Groot dancing at the end of the first movie, so we're gonna get that the fuck out of the way early on, so that we can concentrate on our movie.
It was more than that. It was done in a very.
It was subverting expectations.
Right. Well, it was a great sequence. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that it feels like he wanted to get that out of the way so that people weren't, saying, "Oh, there wasn't enough Groot in this movie."
That was probably part.
There might be too much Baby Groot in this movie, but we'll get to that.
That was probably part of the case, but I got the feeling the opening sequence was done, it was a very playful sequence.
Mm-hmm.
It was room. James Gunn was given room to deliver really whatever he wanted, and so he chose a very creative and fun way to throw us into this new adventure, while maintaining the focus solely on Baby Groot dancing. This very very cute, almost exploitative moment, while in the background there's this horrific action going on and the characters are in dire straits, but you got Groot just being Groot.
It's also worth noting that all the Marvel films are often faulted for all having a very similar style to them, and there's even a video from Every Frame of Painting that explains why this is the case. And James Gunn has stated in interviews that Marvel gave him significantly more creative freedom with Guardians 2, and it still stands that both the first one and this new one are outliers in the Marvel universe, and that they don't really feel locked into that same formula that the vast majority of other Marvel films are stuck in.
I'm gonna straight out say that Guardians 2 is a live action animation. It's a cartoon.
That's what Double Toasted said, and they weren't particularly kind to the film for the most part. But speaking of people that have reviewed it already, Red Letter Media pointed out that this is the only Marvel film that... Well, I know the fucking Russos write and direct, don't they?
They wrote and direct Civil War, and they wrote and directed
Winter Soldier.
Winter Soldier, I believe.
They did, and they will be directing Infinity War as well.
Yeah, but they both write and direct.
Yeah.
James Gunn both writes and direct, and guess what? Like those 4 films now, the 2 Guardians films and the Captain America sequels, those are probably the best in the whole franchise.
Amongst them, I would say
amongst the best. Yes, definitely.
I would say that
Avengers 1 is good too, but
Winter Soldier and the Guardians of the Galaxy films are my favorite Marvel movies. I will say that.
Mm-hmm.
Very defiantly James Gunn. Through and through.
Well, that's how I felt about the opening credits, was because they played Mr. Blue Sky, and there was a period in time, I know you guys are old enough to remember this, a period in time where Mr. Blue Sky was in like every trailer. It started with Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Yeah.
And then it just started popping up in trailers all the time.
So
and when it started playing in this, I was like, oh, this song.
I think that was a couple of years before a couple of years after the Little Less Concentration Elvis song was in, or Conversation or whatever, however the fuck that song goes, was in everything.
So the Russos did not write either of the Captain America movies. That was
they didn't? Okay.
No, that was Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFreely.
Oh, okay.
Are they also writing the Infinity War movie?
I believe so.
So they have
Yes,
that
they
work
are.
with.
So James Gunn is the only writer-director who's done multiple.
I think so. If not, yeah, because well, no, didn't Joss Whedon do both the Avengers movies, writing and directing?
Yeah, he did. But Avengers 2 is more like a half because considering the production troubles that he had creatively on that one.
And it's interesting to see how the Marvel universe is evolving because all the earlier Marvel films, especially Phase 1 and the first half of Phase 2, you had a sense that there was a lot of creative control exercised by Marvel where the director would have a vision and then Marvel would be like, well, no, you got to stick to this blueprint that we just gave you.
Right.
Whereas Guardians is so distinctly unique and quirky and like you said, Bill, very much James Gunn.
Yes.
Oh yeah, definitely. If you've seen James Gunn's other films dating back to Trumbo and Juliet, there isn't like this wonderful edge to them where it's I don't want to say it's like what's a good word for it, like monstrous or schlocky. There you go. It's not like that. His movies have always been, or the movies he's been attached to even, have always been very strong with regards to character and feeling.
Oh, I would say one thing that Gunn has in all of his movies, and he is this weird blend between kind of realistic human emotion and cartoonish camp.
Yeah, there's a lot of
those two elements together in a really, really bizarre way.
But it works. He's able to find that balance between the two, and I think that balance lies in bringing out that general sense of humanity and specifying it to each movie. You know, like, okay, in this movie the humanity is represented this way, and in this movie it's represented this way, and this is how we're going to, structure everything. And then I can throw in the little bizarre stuff here and there. I find that for him, every movie is very personal.
Mm-hmm.
And especially this movie too. I can tell there's a lot of personal involvement in it, and not just because he's the director and writer, but I think also just as a person.
Well, the over. Go ahead. Sorry.
Of all of us, I think Bill A. and I follow James Gunn on Facebook.
And Twitter. I follow him on Twitter.
Well, I'm saying going as far back as when he first got this deal to do this, and every time he would talk about like writing the script and adapting it, he would always be like, I love these comics, I love these characters, and you can tell that he actually went and read the stuff. It's not like somebody, it's not like a screenwriter for hire being assigned and not doing the research.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he attached himself to these characters and very much identifies with them and with their plight, and almost like an actor would. He kind of envelops himself into that and makes it a part of himself.
When he posts about, especially like when he does the updates about the script, like he seems so passionate about it. Like he's always so proud to say like, you guys are going to love this.
The underlying theme within Guardians Volume 2 that really fascinates me is it's a movie about daddy issues.
Empire.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's very much.
It's got that. That's the thing people seem to miss out about Empire Strikes Back. They always the one word they always say about Empire Strikes Back is, "Oh, it's the darkest of them," kind of like Revenge of the Sith.
But it also has a lot
really
of
about daddy. And it's got comedy in it too, definitely. But it's also a tragedy of daddy issues and trying to get over legacy and expectations.
You know what? Just a quick aside. I think Clerks helped that internet argument about Empire.
Yeah.
Well, it's a very concise. I think it's a very concise explanation as to why Empire is good.
Yeah, but it's got all these
and
different
I agree with that,
sub levels to it that people don't
Kevin Smith
can
sort of wax intellectual about Star Wars, and the people that are trying to like repeat his philosophies on it. Again, the way Bill put it, like people just boil it down to like, oh well, it's the darkest one, so that makes it the best.
No, I think the way Kevin Smith describes it in Clerks as a series of down endings, that's actually a really fascinating look at it. It's not just saying it's dark. It's saying, you know, that there's a lot of disappointment in life, and the movie is kind of, you know, that's a
Dante was going to get shot at the end of that movie.
yeah.
There you go. There you go. Yeah. So, but and even then, even in the Clerks ending, while he didn't get shot in the final theatrical version, it's not a down ending, but it's kind of a bittersweet ending. Even though everything kind of has resolved itself, there's still, you know, some lingering.
As far as I would disagree, his love life is in shambles at the end of that.
Yeah, everything's in shambles, but you know, he's smiling at the end. He's like,
well,
you know,
yeah,
just another day, you know.
Well, at the end of The Empire Strikes Back, even though Han is, you know, is gone, you look at how Luke and how Leia and Chewie and everyone Lando's reacting. They are optimistic about the future, even though they know that they've got a long road ahead of them.
That's kind of the same with Guardians of the Galaxy too. There's in that ending. It's a very emotional ending, not the climax. The climax is emotional too, but the finale is emotional. But at the same time, it's also rather sweet and optimistic, just like you said.
I didn't full on tear up watching Guardians 2, but like there was a bunch of moments that almost got me, I gotta say.
I would say the character who brings the most heavy emotion to the pile is a performance that I have to say, in a career of wonderful performances, Michael Rooker really brought his A game.
Who is a James Gunn staple?
Yes.
Those two were like, you know.
Yondu was by far the best part of the movie for me, besides Drax.
Yes.
Okay. Well, we'll talk about Drax.
We'll talk about Drax, but
Yondu was, he was great. He was,
and we're going full spoilers on this, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, should we sort of sum up our feelings and then go into just say, all right, from this point on, spoilers?
I think we've kind of summed up our feelings, and I think we're ready.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear.
Yeah,
just say from this point on, there's going to be spoilers.
Yeah.
It's a great movie that you should go see, and if you don't want spoilers, stop listening right now.
Yeah, and we mean right now, because Yondu dies in this movie.
Okay, there you go. He just threw it out there.
Threw it right out.
He doesn't so much die.
Like, didn't he give him time to press the pause button, Ken?
No. Yeah, he saved Peter. And he dies the same way that they killed off his crew by letting them out of the airlock.
Right.
And you know what?
He actually does what Peter did in the first movie, which was he's to save Gamora. He gave her the oxygen helmet and was willing to give her those few minutes to live, and just in case if he died, you know, Yondu was going to pick him up anyways. But it looked like if it had been just a few seconds later, you know, Peter would have given out, and that's the same thing kind of happened with.
You know, and this is what upset me, because I say upset, but not in a bad way. This is what really hit me hard, is that Yondu dies, and I was like, oh, you know what? They're going to come back and pick him up. And you know, it's like, nope, they're covering his body in trinkets and stuff to remember him. It's like, yeah, he's probably going to come back. And then they burn it and they scatter his fucking ashes out in the earth. I was like, okay, he's dead. He's not coming back.
Yeah.
That was what hit me the hardest. I was like, they really drove it home that Yondu is not going to come back.
Yes.
And that is what made it so emotional for me.
Yeah, because the thing is, if they had left any doubt as to him coming back, then knowing Marvel movies, it would have killed the emotion, because he would have said, yeah, he'll come back somehow.
Yes.
I got to this day, people keep saying that the Mandarin is going to return to
no one gives a fuck about the Mandarin at this point.
Yeah. People say that because of that one shot that insinuates that the Mandarin still exists and is still out there. And it's like,
I like Kingsley. I liked him. He had a nice little twist in that movie, but that twist took away any power the character had. So what are you going to do with it?
Well, no, they insinuate in a Marvel one-shot short film, Bill, that there in fact is an actual Mandarin out there.
Oh, that's confusing. Okay.
Yeah, it's dumb, really.
Right.
Stay with that. I prefer the context of the movies themselves, and I don't give credence to that.
Yeah.
To me, that was just retconning.
So I think we were.
So Yondu.
Yeah, Yondu sacrifices himself for Peter in the ultimate in the ultimate way, really, in that they kind of resolve whatever issues they had with each other on the way out of the planet. He says a line that actually a lot of critics don't like. I didn't mind. He said, that guy may have been your father, but he ain't your daddy.
Mm-hmm. I thought that was a fantastic line.
Yeah, because in a weird way, the way they've made Yondu fit into these films, like, he is sort of Michael Rooker. He can speak in that hick type of way, and it can come off as sweet. You know what I mean?
That's the thing. Yondu is a space redneck.
Essentially, yeah, he's a space.
I don't know how the character is in the comic, but again, there's so much of Michael Rooker in that character now.
Oh yeah, I don't care what he's like in the comic. In the context of the movie, he is a space redneck. The dude, he's a space redneck in charge of a space gang, basically.
He's small. He could fit into
a space motorcycle gang.
Even.
Yeah, basically. and it is rather sweet, what he ends up doing for Peter, like going back. For starters, they kind of explain and flesh out a little bit more from the first movie when he kept letting Peter go.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then this movie, he's like, yeah, we're gonna steal these batteries from you, and we're gonna let Peter go and stuff. And then the rest of his gang's like, what the fuck? These guys.
Exactly. There's genuine emotion behind it. Yondu may be a bad guy, but he's not a bad guy.
Yeah,
there you go.
To quote Wreck-It Ralph.
Yeah. He's not really an anti-hero even. He's more just a guy who kind of got stuck in a life that maybe he regrets a little bit, but he's stuck in it and he kind of has to go with it.
Well,
Stallone makes an appearance in this movie as another Ravager, and they have a confrontation where he basically puts Yondu down and is like, dude, with some of your past indiscretions, so
specifically,
I'm shunning you.
Yeah, specifically his taking in of Peter Quill.
Yeah, well, what he was doing was he helped Ego. Ego is played by Kurt Russell, who is Quill's father, a celestial being, Ego the living planet. Ego made a deal with Yondu where he would pick up Ego's spawn, children from all across the galaxy, or universe even, and bring them back. And Yondu always felt iffy about this, but kind of he had a weakness for money, I suppose.
Yep, he liked money.
Well, he reveals later that he didn't know that the kids were dying.
Yeah, when he found out, he stopped. But I think it's implied he stopped with Quill.
Right.
He saw something in Quill that he liked, and his excuse was, "Oh, he was small. He could fit into places good for thieving." But I thought
that he found out that the kids were getting killed.
Well, it was both. He could fit into small spaces was a bullshit excuse for the paternal feelings he had for Quill.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was an excellent little arc he had with Rocket. Rocket was like, "Yeah, I don't care about Quill either. I just want to show him up," And Yondu's like, "Dude, you're basically me. We're just saying this shit, but we're covering up our real feelings."
Yes. A fantastic little scene.
Great conference.
Oh yeah,
between those two. Yes.
Yeah, the Rocket Yondu stuff was great.
In fact, there was a lot of doubling up of characters in this movie. You had Quill and Ego. You had Drax and Mantis.
You had Peter Quill and Ego.
You had Rocket and Yondu. You had Nebula and Gamora.
Yeah. Who else was there?
Drax and Mantis.
Drax and Mantis, yeah. And so they were all going through like double arcs together, like the sisterhood thing, also attached to their fatherhood of Thanos, their adopted father. You had Quill and Ego, having their thing, and revelations of what the real purpose being there is and what to do about it, that kind of thing. You had Drax and Mantis having their connection, which I loved. It was very sweet at the very end. The whole movie, Drax is being brutally honest with Mantis, like, "I don't find you attractive, you're ugly," and all that, but ugly is good, and you can be innocent and stuff like that. You are
that was so weird.
Yeah. I love when he's like gagging and choking visibly at the thought of being with her.
Yeah.
He wakes him up in the middle of the night and he's like, no.
Yeah, but at the very end, she says, Mantis is looking out at the funeral that the Ravagers are having, which was a very beautiful scene. And she says, it's beautiful. And Drax is like, yes, it is. And so are you on the inside. And, and he says that on the inside to kind of cover for his real feelings, which might be that he in fact does like her.
Yeah.
You know? So,
right. Or at the very least, he's gotten to know her enough that he can look past her physical traits that he finds repulsive. Which is hilarious because Mantis is definitely not an ugly character.
Being. No, not at all, yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of doubling up in this movie, which is really cool. And for any other writer, it would be a complete cluster, of character and emotion and how they relate to each other and how they coalesce at the very end. Because everything comes to a point again. We talked about this in movies, like about how all these different arcs and all these different conflicts eventually meet up. It's like in Rogue One. We talked about this with Rogue One, how all that kind of met up to that central mission where they had to take down or find the Death Star Prince and bring it back to. I got some noise happening in the background there. That's the mosquito guy, the mosquito truck. He's releasing mosquito gas to get rid of the mosquitoes. Yeah. So, but anyway, like I was saying, it all coalesces to that central point, and by that point, everyone has evolved just a little bit more, and have learned something new, and that's always neat when a writer can successfully do that, and when a director can successfully express that. It's very, very cool.
I thought it was really interesting how crude it was for a Disney movie.
Yeah,
it kind of was. There were a couple of
the first one has elements of that too.
It does, but not in the sense like they're kind of like underhanded. Like you don't get it unless you really understand what they're saying. But this one, Drax straight up asks Ego if he has a dick.
Yes, well, he says penis, but still, yes.
Yeah, still, but
and Howard the Duck is trying to get it on with an android hooker. It's very clear.
Let's talk about that because there are robot hookers all over that scene.
There's a straight up strip club
his pants. Yondu zips up his pants and imply that he just finished banging one of them.
Yeah.
So.
And then
what
Drax,
I loved about that scene.
Drax says that. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead. Okay, I was just going to say that what I loved about that scene was as he's putting his pants back on, the android is like finished, so she just powers down.
Yes.
She's like, no time for conversation, no time for bullshit. I'm done. I'm ready for the next one.
Gotta recharge those batteries.
And then Drax says that his wife makes his nether regions engorge.
Oh God!
There's a lot of very overt grotesqueness.
I would say that the thing is, if you look at Marvel's target audience, people assume that these movies appeal to teenagers, but if you look at the demographics, it's actually kind of different from what you might immediately assume. According to Box Office Mojo, the teen population is actually significantly young. Okay, listen to this. Audience demographics show that the film plays to an audience 56% male, 44% female, and 22% of the audiences are 25 years old and younger. So 72% of the audience were adults.
Let me take the reins here and just say Deadpool made so much money. Come on. Marvel wants a piece of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I don't know if they were thinking of that though, but
they probably weren't. But
my theater was predominantly people my age or older.
Yes, I did not see a lot of children at my screening.
Which begs an interesting question.
There is a cartoon of Guardians of the Galaxy on a Disney channel. I think it's Disney XD. But I mean, so maybe that's the way they're pushing this towards kids because again, the first movie's not. This movie probably goes a little more risque than that one, but the first
I'm
movie
sure the Disney series asks characters if they have a penis and things like
that.
No,
they don't. That doesn't happen.
I loved the Sovereign in this movie. They were hilarious. I would
very
argue
good.
that one of the things that hurt the movie is that the middle act especially lacked forward momentum and any sort of stakes or threat to work against, because the Sovereign were ostensibly like the main threat of the film, but they were all such doofuses that they never posed a serious threat. It's like, oh, these idiots are coming back with their ships and they're going to get a new butthole torn out again.
I'm going to pose the question with regards to the Sovereign, by the way. For those who saw Death Race 2050, does anyone here think that basically that planet was an entire planet of Perfectus?
I mean,
Yeah, that looks like a Perfectus planet.
the Queen bears a strong resemblance to Paris Hilton.
She was actually in The Great Gatsby by Baz Luhrmann.
I didn't see that.
There is some of that in there. I love their production design for their culture. It's just all gold, but it was classier than Trump.
Their ships work like arcade games.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Like they're doing it like drones.
That was great.
Essentially, that was really cool. Yeah, and they're very perfectionists. That scene where she goes to meet Yondu, the Queen goes to meet Yondu on that snow hooker planet. They're pulling out the carpet for her, and then it gets stuck for a moment.
Oh, that was
For some reason, I was one of the only people in my theater that thought that was just hilarious.
yeah.
You know, there was a couple next to me who were really getting into it, and the friend that I saw it with, we kind of lamented after the fact that we hadn't connected with that couple and just done like a double date type thing later on, because the couple next to me was really getting into it. So the guy was wiping away like profuse tears at Yondu's funeral, and the girl almost fell out of her chair at the scene when Drax is carrying his 3 separate bulging suitcases off the ship, which was funny. But she was like, "Look at all this stuff!"
Yeah,
And
because what
she's,
the
like,
fuck is Drax
busted out
taking
laughing.
with him?
Maybe he's a diva.
Well, he said
What
he didn't want Rocket to touch all of his stuff.
Yeah. What about
let's
before we wrap things
wanna-
up? What about Taserface?
Taserface was great.
There's so much more to cover, but I do want to talk about Drax and a common complaint that I've heard.
Okay,
What's that?
People say like, oh, he's a little different than he was in the first movie, and I believe that just
I think he's coming out of his shell.
Yeah, I think it's the crew rubbing off on him. Just again, they mentioned family a lot. There was a joke. This was a funny joke that Double Toasted made. They're like, well, Vin Diesel's in this movie, so it's got to be all about family.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the things I noticed this too about Drax is that the core tenet of his character in the first movie was that he does not understand any sort of sarcasm or
smarmy
metaphor or anything like that. Like he's very
Drax
direct
takes,
and
he's
literal.
direct, and he takes everything literally, everything at face value, and it makes sense actually that after he has purged himself of his demon, of basically getting this revenge that he needed, that he would unwind in a major way because he no longer has that burden to do, and so literally he's taking care of that problem, and he's moving on to what is a pretty awesome life, and so he's kind of an awesome guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And by far the funniest part of the movie, too.
He's a funnier character than we've had before.
Oh, no.
If we can get him working.
I also want to talk about Ken, you and I were talking about this sequence. When Yondu gets his magic whistling arrow back and slaughters the entirety of the ship and the mutiny crew that tried to imprison him.
Yes, set to come a little bit closer by Jay and the Americans, which is one of my favorites.
That was a brilliant sequence. It reminded me of The Raid a little bit in terms of how the action corresponded to the rhythm of the music. You know what I mean?
Do any of you guys have any knowledge of Howard Stern lore?
No.
Be specific.
Not really.
The Richard Christie, there's this guy that works for Stern named Richard Christie. Him and Sal the stockbroker make little stupid jingles and shit for the show. But Richard Christie is in that sequence. He is a Ravager that he's like on some stairs, and somebody's like, "Where are they?" He goes, "Down there." And then in the credits, his character doesn't have a name. It just says in quotes down there.
That's funny.
That's pretty funny.
No, it was a great sequence. And I still, this has been driving me insane since I saw it on Saturday. I really think that there's like a part towards the very end where I definitely feel like I heard an extra backing chorus during the the actual main bar of the song, like an extra choral background to that piece. And can either of you shed some light on that?
I don't remember hearing too much more depth.
The song at the final verse of the song, the actual orchestrated score kind of blends into it.
Is that what it was? The score?
Yeah, I think the score blends into it and sort of becomes its own thing. Felix
has seen the movie twice already, and she's going to see it a third time, and I've asked her to keep an ear out for that and let me know, but I'll probably see it a second time too. But it's literally been on my mind for the past 6 days, and it's driving me crazy.
Yeah, the best I can say is that it's that the score kind of moves into that a little bit. But I see. I kind of know what you're talking about because I remember hearing that last verse and thinking, yeah, this sounds a little different, and then it dawned on me that the score was probably bleeding into it a little bit.
Well, at least I know I'm not crazy then if you remember something different.
But yeah, with that said, Taserface.
Yeah, Taserface. James Gunn has openly said this is the stupidest character I've ever read.
Oh yeah, well I mean,
like intelligence-wise, he's just very stupid.
Oh right, okay.
The head of the Ravager rebellion that tries to overthrow Yondu's leadership.
Yeah, and Rocket just eternally finds his name hilarious.
Oh yeah,
he's not just him, but like even the Queen of the Sovereign. Like I was hoping they would do it, and they did, where he says his name and then she just starts snickering. Mm-hmm. And then he goes into this full-on laughter. She's like,
he doesn't just say his name. He says something to the effect of, "They will know the guy who took him down. They will fear his name, and that name is Taserface." And she's
the best name.
Oh, and well, the great thing about it is that it's clearly a name that he made up for himself because he thought it was cool.
Yeah.
And that's the best kind of shitty nickname, is when you can tell this person gave this name to himself, and that's sad.
It is, yeah. And I think he was an actual Marvel character, maybe. I don't know the history of the character or whatever. Gunn must have found him in some back page. Deep in the. He must have found him so much deep in the mythology of. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about with regards.
All right,
to
when I Google Taserface, the only thing that comes up are articles about people being tasered in the face.
Taserface is a cyborg in the Marvel Comics universe. In Guardians of the Galaxy, he's a little bit different, but that's where they borrowed it from.
He must have seen that name and gone, "That is the stupidest fucking name for a character. There must be a backstory to that. There must be something to that. So I'm gonna throw him in there. I think that's funny."
I'm seriously. I Googled Taserface. The first article that comes up says police taser group founder in the face. Then police taser their own race relations advisor in the face. Police it's all of these articles about some poor guy who was being.
We have the best police. They do their job well. Protect and serve. It's wonderful. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? They do the job so well.
All right. To wrap up on Guardians, why don't we talk about the multiple endings, or not endings?
There were a lot of
stingers.
After credit scenes. They went on 5 at a time.
I actually only stayed for. I only stayed for 2 of them because we had to leave. But I do remember reading up on. Saw the movie today. When I got back home really quickly, I read it up on Wikipedia what the endings were. So let's talk about that for a second.
Okay, so Adam Warlock gets introduced. He is integral to the Infinity Gauntlet storyline. That is the main stinger that has anything to do with pushing things forward in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, as far as we know, and we'll get to that. There was one with Sean Gunn's character learning to use Yondu's whistle arrow thing.
And accidentally stabbing Drax in the neck.
I want to say this. I love that they're giving Sean Gunn so much to do, or at least from how the ending of this movie is, seemingly he's going to have a slightly bigger role in the next one.
Related to James Gunn?
Right.
He's his brother,
Oh,
he's in Super. He's in, I think he's in Slither. He's been in a lot of stuff.
Okay, fair enough.
Sean also is the physical performance of Rocket.
That's true. Yeah, he did. That is true. He's like a motion capture.
He does a lot of work on these movies. He's not just a cameo supporting.
I loved.
Appearance.
Well, that's the thing is, I love that he was just a member of Yondu's crew in the first movie, and his character really came out of his shell in this. Mm-hmm. So I appreciated that after credits scene. It was nice to see, like, okay, so Yondu's weapon is going to live on, hopefully with this character. We'll see where that goes. What was the next stinger?
So Sylvester Stallone. Sylvester Stallone had a handful of Guardians. So Sylvester Stallone and the guys that he pulls together is like, let's go steal some shit. That is a callback. That is a callback to the original comic book Guardians of the Galaxy. It's that team.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Which Yondu was part of. Yondu was part of that team.
Yeah. So they will either be in Guardians 3 in 2020, or they'll be in Infinity War Part 1 or 2.
And it's not just Stallone. It's Ving Rhames and Michelle Yeoh.
Yeah. And Michelle Yeoh was cast intentionally because Gunn is a big fan of Eastern cinema, so he wanted to cast Michelle Yeoh in that role just as a his personal sort of tribute to that cinema subculture.
Well, James Gunn needs to combine his passions for wrestling and Eastern culture and get Shinsuke Nakamura in one of these movies.
The other guys don't know what we're talking about.
No.
Dave Bautista is a wrestler. He worked for the WWE for a while. He was in the Evolution. Or maybe they were just called Evolution.
They were just called Evolution. And then he made a return in 2014 when Guardians came out.
Yeah, to promote it.
And he tapped out. He tapped out to Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania 30, which took place in New Orleans.
Yes.
And then he hasn't been seen in WWE since, really.
Wow.
Other appearances, but that's been about it. Shinsuke Nakamura is a new wrestler from Japan, and he's kicking butt on SmackDown. So
he is like one of the hottest things in wrestling right now. Let's be honest.
He's great. He's great. So what were the other two stingers?
Okay, so the other stingers that they had, actually the very first one we didn't mention, which is where the character Kraglin's screwing around with Yondu's arrow and accidentally stabs Drax.
That's that's Sean Gunn. That's Sean Gunn.
Oh, that's Sean Gunn. Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, and then another one.
We talked about that. We talked about Stallone, and we talked about Adam Warlock.
And then there's the one with Groot in his teenage phase.
Oh, that was good. I like that. That was funny.
I hope they don't have teenage Groot in the entirety of Guardians 3. I hope.
I would love to see teenage Groot at least for a portion of it.
Watch the animated series on Disney XD.
And by the way, how awesome was it when you discovered that the remote drone fighters that the Sovereign or whoever that they had, it was basically like a video game arcade?
Yeah,
that was pretty fun. I like that.
But anyway, and then the final stinger is a continuation of Stan Lee's cameo, where these characters from Marvel, known as the Watchers, leave before he can finish his story because they're bored by it. And
well, do you know there's a huge theory going on right now with that? Do you know about it?
Right.
No, I don't.
The theory is that Stan Lee is a Watcher, or he's a spy for the Watchers, and all of his cameos in all of these films is just him being a spy for the Watchers.
Yeah, so it's all the same character across all these cameos,
including dying in the Incredible Hulk.
That movie doesn't technically count.
No, it counts with it's a Marvel Universe film.
We didn't say he died, right? He just he straight up some of the
he straight up dies. They mention that in the movie that he dies.
Well, then maybe he's an alien, Ken, and came back to life. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, so the theory is that he is an immortal being, so he obviously was not done in for good by drinking the soda.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough. But
But
yeah,
I mean, at the same time, though, nobody really talks about the Incredible Hulk as being part of Marvel canon, even though it technically is. It's technically not either.
no,
I would agree with that, because-
literally is
Yeah, but
because
that film,
It is.
film is like
they
I would say-
reference it in other Marvel movies directly.
Yeah, but it's
so
still kind of the
They
redheaded
reference-
stepchild.
just because it's a different actor doesn't mean it's not part of the same canon.
That's
They
not what I'm
reference-
saying, though.
they referenced the Ang Lee Hulk in that film. They referenced the goddamn Lou Ferrigno TV series in that film.
Right, but they mention the event that occurred in the Incredible Hulk
In the
as if it was
Avengers.
actual history.
When did they reference it?
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
The scene where he's on the plane on the
Well, the whole thing is he's on the run, and what's her name seeks him out. Scarlet Witch. Scarlet.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
no Black Widow.
Widow.
Black Widow.
I was gonna say
Yeah, I
Black
mean,
Widow's
they
something
reference it
like-
because it has to be part of it, but like it's kind of a reluctant thing, in that nobody really wants to acknowledge the fact that Incredible Hulk kind of kicked off the Marvel
The
Cinematic
incident in
Universe.
Harlem
not to
is
mention-
referenced.
Not to
Iron
mention
Man kicked it
General.
off.
Not to mention General Ross is in Civil War.
This is also
As
true.
the same actor.
Yeah,
the same
right.
actor.
William Hurt.
So-
William Hurt. I love you. Watch.
You can't
the one-
divorce them from each other. I would argue that The Incredible Hulk is a film that could be cut out of the canon, but because so many
Maybe there's more about Stan Lee's character that we don't know. Maybe he can die and come back.
I
Okay,
still
maybe.
stand by my thoughts that that Incredible Hulk is a reluctant entry to the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
I would say that it's because it took place early within the creation of the cinematic universe. They hadn't quite figured out how they were going to fit all the pieces together yet,
Right.
and so that's the awkward one. That is, it's
Yeah.
like
Where is Ed Norton in the Avengers?
it's
No
like
way.
how Evil Dead 2 is technically a sequel to the Evil Dead, even though it's also kind of a remake.
I would call it more of a remake because.
Well, I mean, it's literally Evil Dead 2, and so it is a sequel, but it's also a remake, and so it has kind of this awkward thing where it's like this is a movie that Sam Raimi really wanted to make when he made the Evil Dead, were it not for the resources.
Mhm.
That's the feeling you get, and so that's why it kind of is that uncomfortable feeling.
That's the feeling that I get from the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones.
Yeah.
It's the
That's
impression
that's
that I
the
get.
impression that I get.
The impression that I get.
Fuck that up.
That's the impression
Oh,
that I get.
So, did you guys? How much were you guys paying attention during the end credits?
I loved how
Jeff Goldblum.
all over the place.
Jeff Goldblum was in there, and then at the very end of the credits, one of the little moving portraits was David Hasselhoff. He was like, "I am Groot."
Yes.
Well, apparently he was singing on the track, the track that played after Flashlight.
Yeah.
I did like that scene where Ego
Well,
briefly
and also,
to David
well,
Hasselhoff.
David Hasselhoff appears very briefly in the film when Kurt Russell's ego turns into him for like a split second.
Well, right. Yeah. Of course.
I just said that.
So I wasn't super surprised to see him pop up in the credits. But
No,
yes,
I just thought
that
it was
the-
funny, like that he did
For
just to
me.
say I am Groot. I thought that was a
Mhm.
stupid joke that I thought was hilarious.
I agree
I
with
would've-
you. I'm not trying to diss that observation. However, again, Jeff Goldblum popped up in the credits of this. He wasn't in the film. It was, I guess it was to promote Thor 3.
Well, that was less of a surprise because we had seen the trailers for Thor 3. We knew that Jeff Goldblum was going to be in it, and so, and especially with Thor 3 being another entry into the cosmic side of the Marvel Universe, it wasn't as surprising as a second appearance by David Hasselhoff just to
Okay,
say
I
a
get
Groot
that,
line.
yeah.
So clearly,
That's
Jeff
fair.
Goldblum had something that was either cut from a film or he appears in some random scene somewhere in the movie that is like in the background. I wouldn't be surprised because I don't know much about Jeff Goldblum's character within the Marvel Universe, but I do know that in the Thor trailer, they insinuate that he has this big like event that he's staging for the Hulk to take part in, and for Thor to take part in, is like this big event, and maybe it's televised and maybe it appears on a screen somewhere.
From what I've
Maybe,
read and researched, I don't know if this is going to be the case in the cinematic universe, but previously the character Benicio del Toro plays and the character Jeff Goldblum plays are supposed to be brothers.
Okay.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. They both have that weird like facial hair kind of deal going. So
Plus, they dress very extravagantly.
Yeah.
I'm looking up his character is the Grand Master.
Right, the Grandmaster. He is in an uncredited role in Guardians 2, and then, of course, he's very prominent in Thor 3.
Yeah, all right.
Oh,
I like.
apparently he has been depicted as a brother of the Collector.
Okay.
Yes,
Some forms
that's
of
what
it.
I've heard.
So yeah,
That's what I've heard.
there you go.
Could happen. I would love to see Benicio del Toro and Jeff Goldblum like acting against one another. Have they ever been in anything together?
I don't think so. At least not on screen.
Not that I know of, but
can think
I do know that if Benicio del Toro showed up in that scene instead of Jeff Goldblum, instead of announcing that fight the way Goldblum does, he would have said, "Thor, the Hulk is going to give you a nice honeymoon."
I'm Chef Goldblum.
Chef Goldblum.
Yes.
Chef
I'm
Goldblum.
Chef
Guardians 2 was I liked it a lot. I in comparison to the first one, since we brought that up.
I'm gonna give only. We've been doing nothing but talk this movie up. I have a single criticism of this movie, and
we haven't even really done that, have we?
And the one criticism that I can legitimately say is that I've gotten to the point in these Marvel films where, and this movie has a ton of this, where the action sequences kind of don't always work for me because the physics in them are so inconsistent and so unrealistic to the point where I no longer feel like the main characters are in legitimate danger unless the script says they have to be.
I will say this: there's very little stakes to this film.
Yeah,
but if you're talking about physics, I'm going to refer to you this scene where Rocket is just playfully bouncing a bunch of crooks up and down with these gravity pads,
and it's fairly injuring them. Yeah, well, that and then the
you
big
compared this to a
end.
cartoon earlier. You compared this to a cartoon earlier, and
Right.
that is the kind of spirit that those physics. I don't know.
It's a
I
big
get what you're
cartoon,
saying.
except you are supposed to feel for these characters, and it's harder to feel for characters that you know are not in any actual peril.
That was kind of the shock with Yondu, though.
Right, and it was a shock, and that's why that was one of the strongest elements of the film, and that his character actually had something happen to him. But you didn't get the feeling that was possible with the core Guardians cast. Like you didn't. And here's the thing: my understanding of the Guardians of the Galaxy is that one thing that's common is character death within the comics.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not have that feeling of high stakes where I thought, Gamora's gonna just die at this point, or Quill's just gonna die, or Drax is not gonna come back from this. I felt, yeah, they're all gonna be in the sequel.
Right.
Wow.
It takes away from some of the emotional grip of the film. Now it's not. This is
Guardians.
It's a
Guardians
significant.
3 probably won't come out until Avengers 3 does.
Well, yeah, but
right?
they'll be in the
2020 is the absolute earliest year that Guardians 3 will come out.
But they'll be in the Infinity War movie, I'm sure, somewhere.
They will.
And here's the thing: it's a significant criticism, but it's not a criticism that takes away from my recommendation of this movie.
Sure.
Anyone else have any other criticisms, or?
Not
I
that
love
we
this
haven't
movie.
said already. I mean, it was kind of by breaking up the Guardians and having them all on their own separate tangents, it kind of diminished the team dynamic of the first movie, but they had it back in place by the end. So I'm really not opposed to that.
Okay.
I have very specific complaints. I agree with everything Hawk just said, but this film, in comparison to the first one, I couldn't really tell you a whole lot about. Aside from the "We Are Groot" sequence, I couldn't tell you like most of what happens in the third act of the first movie.
I do like the whole subplot with the Nova Corps and how the Nova Corps works as this big space police kind of team. I liked that.
Oh yeah.
Just everything involving the main villain Ronan is just.
Ronan is not compelling. He's not very memorable. He's not super charismatic.
As I mentioned before, he was. We can't put Thanos in here, so let's bring someone in who's kind of like Thanos, but isn't quite on the level of Thanos.
This isn't a diss to the actor who played Ronan.
It's the way the characters.
Lee Pace.
Lee Pace, and I thought he tried his damnedest. I actually have seen that actor in other things, and I think he's good. But him as Ronan was not super memorable for me. Casting Kurt Russell as your villain in this movie. I mean, it's Kurt Russell.
And that brings, thankfully, the character was written interesting enough that I would argue this Kurt Russell's villain in this was the first decent villain that Marvel's had for a while, because
in a movie, yeah.
Well, I mean,
probably
would say a while, but
the most boring villain.
What?
I'm a big fan of Mads Mikkelsen, but what the fuck? They didn't even
the Doctor Strange villain.
Yeah, they didn't even try to give his character anything to do.
I mean, Baron Zemo in Civil War was pretty good.
Okay, Zemo, I will give you.
I wasn't. You guys liked it. Okay.
I liked Zemu.
Baron Zemo. He's the best. He's the greatest. Can you believe
it? A Scientology supervillain. He flies across space in a DC-9 spaceship.
I want to believe that you told me the truth, L. Ron Hubbard, but I don't believe a word. You're full of fake news.
His theme music is L. Ron Hubbard's piano keyboard score for his book.
The biased media. Anyway, Guardians 2 had a little bit of sequelitis, in my opinion. There would be points in the movie where I was like, you did this because first movie, which most of they weren't squeamish or cringy scenes or anything like that, but there was a few times where I was like, okay, but through and through, again, like just the strength of having James Gunn as the writer-director of this really gave it a clear vision and a clear sense of self.
They kind of get the sequelitis-y stuff out of the way early, and then move on to other things. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, I will say this: it's weird that after such a short period of time, everybody is asking about Peter Quill's music. Mm-hmm. I didn't feel like enough time had passed for that to be as much of a thing as it was in the movie. I liked the musical scores to the sequences and then that kind of thing, but for the characters to mention it as constantly as they did, that was a little strange.
I did like the Zune joke. That was kind of
that was good. No, yeah, that was good. But
they're gonna shit all over the Zune in the next movie.
Somebody's gonna be like, "Have you ever heard of an iPod, son? Apple gave us $5 million."
Maybe that's. Oh wow! What if that is the end game that Disney has here? That the entire purpose of Guardians of the Galaxy is to try to get Apple to pay them money to make, for product placement, and so they're just building up all of these movies to lead to this big Apple reveal.
I bet the next movie is when it involves Zune is going to be nothing but ruminating on whether or not there is a better MP3 player out there besides the Zune. And they're never going to directly reference Apple, but they're going to keep insinuating that the iPod is superior.
There's going to be this scene in Infinity War where Thanos, once he's finally defeated, in the ashes of his defeat, he leaves the next generation of iPhone behind. And Peter Quill's going to pick it up, and he's going to turn it on, and it's going to start playing I'm Bad.
Oh, all right.
That sounds more like a Seltzer-Friedman spoof than actual Marvel.
I will say this: Michael Jackson's Bad record came out after Peter Quill's mom would have died.
Right. Well, and that's the idea, is he's being introduced.
I might be wrong on that. That might have released in '88, but
I guarantee that's what the Zune thing is all going to be a lead into, because he says the Zune has been preloaded with 200 songs or something like that.
Right.
So there's going to be songs he's going to experience. So this gives them an excuse to put songs in the movie that take place after.
That makes sense going forward. But the beautiful thing about the songs in 1 and 2 is that for the character, it has this emotional connection to his mother. And they're all such wonderful songs.
Oh, I agree. And the emotional connection aspect of it, and I think doing that 3 times in a row would certainly be a sequel legacy thing. So
yeah, that's true.
So, but I agree that music is so integral to this series that they need to do something with it, but they need to come up with a new twist on that.
I think that that's the perfect way to do it. So we'll see what they do.
Yeah. So, although I am it's too bad that they went with Zune. I wish they had gone with something even more awkward from like the PDA era.
That's why I think they went for the Zune, because that is a well-known device that they can make fun of throughout the entirety of Guardians 3.
My Zune is glitching up.
Yeah, that feels very calculated to shit all over Microsoft's products.
I'm trying to listen to. I can't even think of what kind of music would Trump listen to?
Oh.
Whatever he thinks is cool at the time.
I want to listen to
these Jonas Brothers. They're really good. They're really good.
The Jonas Brothers are wonderful.
The best
I want to hear them right now. My Zune is glitching up.
What about Nickelback? Would he listen to Nickelback?
Probably.
Oh, he totally would.
Oh God! It's like
I know the singer.
Be
great man,
metal.
Wonderful person, very smart.
Listen, the new the man who's going to choose the selections for Awesome Mix Volume 3 is Donald Trump. My first choice is Rollin' by Limp Bizkit. It's a wonderful song. Can you believe it? Can you believe it?
Keep rolling. Yes.
Terminate the broadcast.
My favorite record is Hot Dog Flavored Water and the Chocolate Starfish. That's the best record I've ever heard. Can you believe it? Can you believe it?
What if Star-Lord's next gadget is the Nokia N-Gauge?
Or the sidekick?
What is that?
Oh, you don't remember the N-Gauge?
Was that a video game console?
It was a phone that...
go ahead.
It was a phone that wanted to be a handheld video game console. It released literally
I remember this thing. Yeah,
it was literally less than 24 games released for it.
Yeah, it was an MP3 player, cell phone, a PDA, gaming device, and it could connect to the internet. I say that in air quotes that you can't see because
Nokia,
in order to connect it to the internet, you had to buy didn't you have to buy the what's it?
You had to buy an extra little card that would connect you to the internet, like that. Yeah. You couldn't just out of the box. You could not connect to the internet.
Mm-hmm. It's one of the jankiest things. I remember they were trying to lure people away from the Game Boy Advance, but it was just.
You said less than 12 games. I don't know.
Actually, you know what? I just looked it up, and there are actually 58 total, but a lot of them are just they were either ports or very very obscure games. It's all it is Tom Clancy, FIFA, Rayman. I don't think there's a single original game that was not some kind of continuation or port for the
Nokia, take my money. I want to play Snake. Can you believe it? I just go up and down.
I just go up and down. Can you believe it?
All right. Well, we're winding down our episode here. So
listen, boys and girls, we're at the end of the show. Can you believe it? I don't know what you've learned from what we've talked about here today.
Exactly.
But we'll learn more next week. You should tune in. It'll be great. It'll be the best podcast.